I had ruled for 450 years, conquered kingdoms whose names were now dust, commanded armies of the undead
The
through
time has come
wars
to unveil
mortals
our
had
strategy.
forgotten.
We
But
must
when my
act
son was
decisively
taken
and
from
without
his crib,
hesitation.
while I sat in a council meeting, debating tax policy on blood tithes, I realized I had forgotten the one thing that mattered. I had never learned to be a father. The realization came too late, as most truths do. 3 months before Gabriel vanished, Serafina died in my arms. Childbirth should not kill a vampire. We are creatures of eternity, our bodies resilient beyond mortal comprehension. But she had been turned young, her human frame barely 16 when the transformation took her. Some part of her remained fragile in ways I never understood. Pregnancy taxed that hidden weakness until her immortal flesh could no longer sustain 2 lives. I remember the nursery smelled of lavender and iron. She had insisted on lavender. The iron came later, cooling beneath the birthing bed in quantities that should have been impossible. Dr. Strand worked for 6 hours while I paced the corridor outside like a coward. When he finally opened the door, his ancient face carried the exhaustion of defeat. Your son lives. Your wife does not. The words hit like silver through the heart. I found her propped against pillows, skin translucent as moonlight holding a bundle wrapped in cream linen. Gabriel, our son, the heir to 3,000 years of unbroken lineage. His eyes were closed, tiny fists curled against his chest, and he made small sounds that might have been distress or simply the confusion of new existence. Serafina's smile was tired beyond measure. She looked at me with those amber eyes that had first captivated me a century ago in a Paris ballroom, and I saw something I had never seen before: disappointment. Promise me. Her voice barely rose above whisper. I moved to her bedside, taking her free hand. It felt cold even to my touch. Anything. Let him know love, not just power. She shifted Gabriel slightly, and I saw the crowning crescent birthmark on his tiny wrist, the royal seal manifesting already. Sing to him, Dante. Even when your voice breaks, especially then, I will ensure he has nurses. The finest tutors. She cut me off with a shake of her head, movement costing her visible effort. You're already making him a king instead of a child. Just promise me you'll try. Try to be his father, not his sovereign. I should have promised, should have knelt and sworn whatever oath she needed. Instead, I heard myself deflecting. You will teach him yourself. When you recover, we will. I am not recovering. Blood leaked from the corner of her mouth, black and viscous. We both know it. And you cannot lie to me, not after 100 years. So I am asking, will you let him know
The
tenderness?
time has come to unveil our
Will you let him
strategy.
be a boy before
We
you
must
make
act
him a weapon?
decisively and without
The
hesitation.
question hung between us, and I found I could not answer. Tenderness was not a language I spoke. My own father had raised me with an iron hand and centuries of tradition. I had learned to command, to strategize, to rule with absolute authority. But tenderness, that was the province of humans in their brief, soft lives. Serafina saw my silence for the answer it was. Her expression shifted, grief replacing hope. Then I pray someone else teaches him. Because if you raise him alone, you will make him as hollow as you have become. The words should have angered me. Instead, they slid past my defenses and lodged somewhere I had thought long dead. Before I could formulate a response, her eyes dimmed. The grip on my hand loosened. She drew one final breath and used it to sing. The melody was ancient, older than our bloodline, older perhaps than vampires themselves. I had heard her singing it to Gabriel every night since his birth, a lullaby in Old English that she claimed came from her mortal mother's mother's mother. The words spoke of cradles and protection of love, outlasting stone of mercy, building thrones more lasting than conquest. She made it through 2 lines before her voice failed. The lullaby died with her incomplete, and I realized with sudden horror that I had never learned it, had never asked her to teach me, had dismissed it as a
The time
mother's
has come to
foolishness
unveil our
when I
strategy.
should have recognized
We
it as
must
the
act
only
decisively
inheritance
and
that
without
mattered.
hesitation.
Gabriel began to cry, not the weak mewling of human infants, but a wail that carried the supernatural strength of our kind. The sound tore through the castle, and I stood there holding my dead wife's hand, staring at the son I did not know how to comfort. Dr. Strand entered quietly. My king, we must prepare the body for get out. He retreated without argument. I remained frozen, watching Gabriel scream himself into exhaustion, until finally he fell silent and slept. I should have picked him up. Should have held him, sung to him, offered some comfort, even if I knew not how. Instead, I called for the wet nurse and walked away. I buried Serafina in the garden she had loved, beneath the silver roses she had cultivated for decades. The entire court attended the funeral, faces solemn, hands clasped in appropriate mourning. I stood at the graveside and delivered a eulogy praising her wisdom, her grace, her service to our kingdom. Every word was true. Every word was hollow. When they lowered her into the earth, I felt nothing. The absence of feeling terrified me more than any emotion could have. I was a monument of stone, watching stone descend into stone. Somewhere in the 4.5 centuries since my own transformation, I had lost the capacity for grief. I could not weep for the woman who had shared my bed for 100 years, who had given her life to continue my bloodline.
Decisively and without hesitation.
That night, I returned to the throne room and handled correspondence. Reports from the outer territories. Disputes requiring royal arbitration. A request from Marcus Ashford, my commander, to modernize our defensive positions. I worked until dawn, focusing on policy and strategy. Anything to avoid the empty chambers that still smelled of lavender. Gabriel's cries echoed through the castle for weeks. The nurses reported that he would not settle, would not eat properly, screamed whenever he tried to lay him down. I ordered them to find a solution and buried myself deeper in governance. The kingdom needed a strong hand. My personal inadequacies could not be allowed to compromise our security. 3 months passed, and I saw my son. The nurses would present him. I would not approve of his growth, and I would leave before his eyes could focus on me with anything resembling recognition or need. It was easier that way, cleaner. A king could not afford to be distracted by an infant's demands. Then came the fire. I was in the council chamber when the bells rang. Not the slow toll of ceremony, but the frantic clanging of alarm. Smoke poured through the eastern quarters, black and acrid, carrying the stench of burning flesh. I moved faster than thought, shadow-stepping through the castle's passages, arriving at the nursery in seconds.
The time has come to unveil our strategy.
Late. The hallway was an inferno.
Decisively and
6
without
guards
hesitation.
laid dead throats, torn open bodies, positioned to block reinforcements. The heavy oak door to the nursery hung from twisted hinges. The protective wards I had commissioned shattered. Inside, flames consumed tapestries and furniture, turning the lavender-scented sanctuary into a vision of hell. The crib stood empty. I tore through the burning room, searching for any sign of Gabriel, any indication of where they had taken him. Found nothing but ash and blood. The rebels had planned this perfectly timed attack. For the moment, I would be most distracted, most vulnerable. They had breached my fortress, slaughtered my guards, and stolen the one thing in this world I could not replace. And I had not been there, had not even been in the same room, had been discussing tax revenue while my son was being kidnapped. The rage came then. Not grief, I still could not access that, but fury so absolute it consumed rational thought. I called for Marcus for Theron for every soldier sworn to my service. Within the hour, we had identified the rebel cell responsible. Within 3 hours, I was leading the hunt personally. We found their first safe house at dawn. 8 vampires, all armed, all prepared to fight. They lasted 4 minutes. I killed 3 myself, taking my time with the last one, a young female who could not have been turned more than a decade ago. She spat blood at my feet and called me tyrant, oppressor, relic of a dying age.
And without hesitation.
Where is my son? The question came out flat, emotionless, which somehow made it more terrifying. She laughed through broken teeth. You think we took him to kill him? We saved him from you. You are a monster, Corvinus. Your own son would have been just another weapon in your arsenal, just another pawn in your endless game of power. We gave him mercy. Where is my son? Somewhere you will never find. Somewhere a monster like you does not deserve to look. She died with those words on her lips, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not closure, just the void where emotions should have been. 2 more safe houses, 17 each interrogation yielded fragments of information, pieces of a puzzle that never quite completed. They had split up, moved the prince through a network of sympathizers, always staying ahead of our pursuit. By the 3rd night, we had exhausted every lead within 50 miles. I stood in the ruins of the burned nursery, Gabriel's empty crib, a monument to my failure, and forced myself to think. The rebels were idealists, true believers in some fantasy of vampire-human integration. They would not simply murder an infant regardless of his bloodline. They would hide him, protect him, perhaps even plan to raise him according
The
to their
time has come
twisted
to unveil
philosophy,
our strategy.
which meant he was
We
still
must
alive.
act decisively and
somewhere.
without hesitation.
I closed my eyes and reached for the blow of magic that connected me to my heir. Every vampire king possessed this gift, a thin thread of awareness that bound them to their direct lineage. It was faint at the best of times, barely more than intuition. But Gabriel was young, his blood still warm with the half-human vitality inherited from Seraphina's relatively recent transformation. There, a whisper of presence, fragile as copper. Not north where the rebels had fled, not in any of the mountain hideouts we had raided. South, closer than I had imagined possible. Gabriel's signature pulsed somewhere within 8 miles of the castle itself, hidden in plain sight, while I had been tearing apart the wilderness. The audacity of it struck me. They had not run, had not tried to smuggle him across borders or hide him in some remote location. They had simply walked him down the mountain into the human settlements below, trusting that I would never think to look there. I called for a horse rather than shadow stepping. The blood magic was too delicate for that kind of violent translocation. I needed to follow the thread carefully, let it guide me through the network of small towns and scattered buildings that clustered at the mountain's base. The trail led south along the old highway, past abandoned mining operations and overgrown logging roads. Rain began to fall hard and cold, turning the November night into a
We must
wash of
act
gray and black.
decisively and without hesitation.
Thunder rolled through the peaks, and I thought of Seraphina's warning. If you raise him alone, you will make him hollow. Perhaps she had been right. Perhaps I had already failed before the rebels ever struck. But failure was not something a king could acknowledge. I would find Gabriel eliminate the threat and restore order. Then I would ensure proper security measures prevented this from ever happening again. That was duty. That was responsibility. The blood magic grew stronger as I approached a cluster of buildings. Silver Falls, according to the weathered sign. Population 437, barely large enough to qualify as a town. A gas station, a general store, a few homes scattered among the pine trees. And there at the edge of the settlement, where the highway headed toward access road, a small diner with a flickering neon sign that read Pine Ridge Cafe. The signature pulsed from somewhere behind that building. I dismounted and approached on foot, moving with the unnatural silence of my kind. 2:15 in the morning. The diner's interior lights were on, but I saw no customers through the rain-streaked windows. A single vehicle sat in the parking lot, an aging pickup truck with local plates. The smell hit me before I reached the door. Human fear, sharp and immediate, but also something else, milk warmth, the particular scent of an infant recently fed.
The time has
And
come to
underneath it
unveil our
all,
strategy.
faint but unmistakable, the
We must
royal
act
bloodline.
decisively and without
Gabriel was
hesitation.
here. I should have crashed through the door, should have used overwhelming force to secure my son and eliminate any threats. That was the tactical approach, the strategy any king worth his crown would employ. Instead, I found myself hesitating, hand on the door handle, suddenly uncertain. What would I find inside? Rebel vampires prepared to fight to the death? A hostage situation designed to force my hand? Or something my ancient mind did not quite grasp? Some scenario I had not considered in my 4 centuries of youth. The door opened under my hand. I stepped into warmth and light, into the smell of old coffee and frying grease, into a scene so mundane it seemed to exist in a different world from the blood-soaked violence I had waded through for years. The woman stood behind the counter, dish rag in hand, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore a stained apron over cheap clothes, the uniform of working poverty I had seen countless times and never truly registered. Her eyes went wide when she saw me, fear and confusion warring across her face, but she did not run. "We are open. Take any seat." The words came out steady despite the tremor underneath. I did not move from the doorway. Rain hammered the roof above us, thunder providing percussion to the moment's tension. Every instinct I possessed screamed that this was wrong, that rebels would not leave a human civilian in charge of the prince, that I was missing something fundamental. You are alone. I made it a statement rather than question, already knowing the answer. No heartbeat, but hers echoed in the small space. No hidden vampires crouched in shadows. Just this mortal woman and the scent of my son emanating from somewhere behind her. My cook called in sick, her hand tightened on the dish, rag knuckles going white. Storm's keeping folks home. What can I get you? I am looking for something. I stepped fully inside, letting the door close behind me. Someone, actually. Have you seen anything unusual? Perhaps a child. The micro-expressions that crossed her face told me everything. Fear spiking to terror, protective instinct flaring. The slight shift of her body was positioning herself between me and Pat. She knew. She had Gabriel, and she was preparing to die defending him. Just me in the storm. She reached for a menu with hands that shook despite her efforts at control. Coffee, we have got fresh pie. The lie was admirable in its transparency. This woman had no training in deception, no supernatural abilities to mask her thoughts. Yet she stood there exhausted and terrified, attempting to protect something she barely understood from a threat she could not possibly comprehend. I should have admired her courage, should have recognized the selflessness required to place herself between danger
We must
and an
act
innocent.
decisively and without
Instead, I
hesitation.
felt only the cold calculation of predator evaluating prey. She was an obstacle, nothing more. Then Gabriel cried. The sound cut through walls and distance, a wail of distress that called to something deeper than thought. My son, alive, close enough to hear. The blood magic surged, confirming what my ears reported, and I moved before conscious decision could intervene. The door to the back room stood unlocked. I hit it with enough force to tear it from its hinges, wood splintering in a crash of destruction, echoing through the small building. The woman screamed behind me, running footsteps approaching, but I was already inside. The space was cramped and cluttered, boxes of supplies stacked against walls, a desk and scattered groceries, and they're arranged on a nest of folded in cheap tablecloths, wrapped in a worn wool shawl, my son, Gabriel. I stopped, simply stopped, all momentum bleeding away, and stared. He looked so small. 3 months old, barely larger than he had been the night Serafina died. His skin carried the pale translucence of our kind, but with warmth underneath that spoke of his half-human heritage. The crown and crescent birthmark glowed softly on his wrist, pulsing in time with his rapid heartbeat. His eyes opened as I approached,
The time
red
has
and
come to
luminous,
unveil our
and fixed on
strategy.
me with the
We
unfocused
must act
awareness of
decisively
infancy.
and without hesitation.
The cry stopped. He stared at me, this stranger who shared his blood, but not his trust, and I saw confusion in that small face. Not recognition, not relief, just wariness. I reached for him and he flinched. The movement was tiny, barely perceptible, but it hit like a blade through armor. My own son recoiled from my touch. After 3 days of searching, of slaughter, of single-minded pursuit, I had finally found him, and he was afraid of me. Please. The woman's voice came from the doorway, breathless and desperate. Please do not hurt him. I turned and she threw herself between us. Mortal flesh against immortal strength, the gesture as futile as her heart hammered loud enough to hear across the room, pulse visible in her throat, every biological sign screaming that she understood the danger she faced. Yet she did not move. Step aside. The words came out colder than I intended. No. The absolute simplicity of her diffusal struck me silent. No negotiation, no bargaining, no attempt to appeal to reason or mercy. Just flat refusal backed by nothing but stubborn will. I could kill you without effort, snap your neck like kindling. The threat emerged automatic, the language of power I had spoken for centuries.
The time has
You
come to
will have
unveil
to.
our strategy.
She raised her chin,
We must act
exposing that
decisively
vulnerable
and
throat
without
in
hesitation.
challenge rather than submission. I am not moving. We stood locked in that tableau. Predator and prey, frozen in mutual standoff while Gabriel began to cry again. The sound built, escalating from distress to panic, and I watched the woman's expression shift. The fear remained, but something else joined it. Anguish. Not for herself, but for the child she protected. He is scared. Her voice cracked. He does not understand. You have been gone. The words landed with unexpected force. Gone. As if my absence was the problem. As if my 3-day search through blood and fire somehow made me the villain in this scenario. I wanted to argue, to explain the impossible logistics of finding a kidnapped heir in a region spanning hundreds of square miles. But Gabriel's cries cut through rationality, and suddenly I was back in that lavender-scented nursery, watching him scream himself into exhaustion, while I stood paralyzed by ignorance. I moved past her, not roughly, but with the kind of authority that permitted no resistance. She stumbled aside and I knelt beside the makeshift crib. Gabriel's tiny face was red from crying, his small fist beating the air in wordless protest. I reached for him again, slowly this time, and lifted him into my arms. He screamed. Not the earlier
The time has
distress,
come to
but
unveil our
full-throated
strategy.
terror back arching,
We must act
pushing away
decisively
from
and
me with
without
surprising
hesitation.
strength. His power flared the royal bloodline, manifesting in a pulse of energy that made my hands tingle. An infant should not possess this much force. The potential within him was staggering and completely out of control. Shh. I attempted the soothing sounds I had heard nurses make, but my voice carried no comfort. Gabriel only cried harder, and I felt the edges of panic creeping into my ancient calm. What was I doing wrong? Why would he not give him to me? The woman stood close now, arms outstretched. Please, let me try, but every instinct rebelled against the idea. Gabriel was my son, my heir, my responsibility. Handing him to a mortal stranger violated every protocol, every reasonable precaution. But he was screaming in my arms, rejecting me with every fiber of his small being, and I had no idea how to fix it. I passed him to her, and the transformation was instant. Gabriel's cries stopped. He nestled against her chest, making small sounds of relief, tiny hands clutching her stained uniform. She swayed gently, humming under her breath, and my son, the crown prince of the night court, heir to 3,000 years of unbroken lineage, sighed in contentment and closed his eyes. The woman looked at me over Gabriel's head, and I saw tears streaming down her face.
The time has come to
Grief
unveil
and
our
relief
strategy.
mingled their emotions
We
I
must
could
act
name, but
decisively
not
and without
access.
hesitation.
She held my son like he was precious, like he mattered more than her own safety, and I realized with creeping horror that this mortal stranger had given Gabriel something I had not even attempted to offer. Love. Explain to me. My voice came out hoarse, the words grinding through her throat suddenly tight. Explain to me why my son, the crown prince of vampires, heir to a bloodline, stretching back 3 millennia, refuses his own father's touch, but clings to a mortal waitress like she birthed him herself. She met my eyes, still crying, still swaying to some rhythm. Only she and Gabriel understood. Maybe he just knows who saved his life. The truth of it cut deeper than silver. She had saved him. This exhausted grandmother's medication had found my dying son in the trash and chosen mercy. While I had been playing at kingship, she had been practicing the one thing that mattered. Thunder rolled overhead, and in the silence that followed, I heard the melody she had been humming. Recognition hit like physical impact. That tune is impossible but unmistakable. The lullaby Serafina had sung, the one that died with her. The song I had never learned. How? The question emerged barely above whisper. How do you know that song? What song? She looked confused, not deceptive, just
The time has come to
honestly
unveil our
unaware.
strategy.
The one you were humming.
We must act
that
decisively
melody.
and without hesitation.
She glanced down at Gabriel, then back to me. Oh, I do not even realize I am doing it. My grandmother taught me when I was little. She used to sing it when I could not sleep. Said her mama taught her going back generations. Where? I stepped closer, careful not to spook her. Where did your grandmother learn it? I do not know exactly. She always called it the old country song. Appalachia. I think her mother's people came from the mountains back in the 1800s. Why the timeline aligned too perfectly to be coincidence. The song had been declared royal property 200 years ago, forbidden to common vampires and humans alike. But before that, it had belonged to the folk of these mountains, passed mother to daughter through generations. Serafina's own mother had learned it as a human child before her transformation and carried it into immortality as one of the few fragments of her mortal life. And this woman's grandmother had done the same. Preserved the melody through oral tradition, kept it alive while my family had tried to bury it under royal decree. The song had survived our attempts at ownership and returned through the most unlikely vessel imaginable. I thought of Serafina's last words. Let him know love, not just power. Sing to him even when your voice breaks. This mortal had done what I could not. She had given my son the one thing I had never
time
learned
has
to
come to
offer, the
unveil
one
our
inheritance
strategy.
that mattered
We
more
must
than
act
bloodlines
decisively
or
and without
crowns.
hesitation.
And Gabriel, with the pure instinct of innocence, had recognized what I was only beginning to understand. I am Dante Corvinus. The introduction came out formal, inadequate. King of the Night Court. Gabriel's father, Elena Hayes. She shifted Gabriel, slightly protective even now. I work here. At the diner, the absurdity of the situation struck me. I was standing in a storage room behind a roadside cafe, soaked in rain, covered in 3 days' worth of blood and grime, introducing myself to a waitress who held my son with more natural grace than I had ever managed. How long have you had him? Since last night. Found him behind the building in the rain. He was so cold. She looked down at me and fresh tears spilled. I thought he was dead at first. No heartbeat that I could feel. But then he opened his eyes and I could not leave him there. You should have. The words emerged harsher than intended. You should have called the authorities and walked away. Do you have any idea what you have gotten yourself into? What danger you are in simply by being in this room? Her chin came up again, defiance flashing through fear. He is a baby. I do not care what he is or who his father is. He needed help, and I helped him.
The time has
That
come
is
to
what decent
unveil our
people do.
strategy.
Decent
We must
people
act
end up dead
decisively
when they
and without
interfere with
hesitation.
vampire politics. Then I guess I will die decent. She held Gabriel tighter and he made a small sound of protest at the compression. At least I will know I tried to do the right thing. The right thing. I almost laughed at the naivety, as if right and wrong still held meaning in a world where bloodlines and power determine survival. But looking at Gabriel sleeping peacefully in her arms, at the worn shawl she had wrapped him in, at the evidence of her sacrifice written in every detail of his cramped room, I could not quite dismiss her words as childish idealism. She had done what was right. While I had been calculating a political advantage and pursuing vendettas, she had simply helped a child in need. The purity of that choice exposed everything wrong with my approach, with my entire philosophy. You realize I cannot leave you here. The statement came out flat, brooking no argument. The rebels know Gabriel carries the royal seal. They will expect me to find him, and when they discover a human has been caring for him, they will come for you both. Then take him. She held Gabriel out toward me, and I saw the gesture cost her. Take him somewhere safe. Gabriel's eyes opened. He looked at me, looked at Elena, and began to cry again. Small hands reached for her, refusing the transfer, and I watched my son choose her
time has
over
come
me,
to
and
unveil
for the
our
second
strategy.
time in as many minutes.
We must act
He will
decisively
not
and without
survive
hesitation.
separation from you. The admission tasted like defeat. Whatever bond you have created, he needs you now. Which means human, that whether I trust you or not, I have no choice but to keep you alive. Thunder crashed directly overhead, close enough to rattle the building's frame. In that moment of noise and chaos, I made a decision that would alter the trajectory of my reign, my relationship with my son, and the future of our species. Pack whatever you need. Leave 5 minutes. Elena's eyes were wide. Leave to where? Somewhere protected. Somewhere I can secure both of you while I deal with the court. She started to protest and I cut her off. This is not negotiable. You saved Gabriel's life. Now I will save yours. Consider it your services right. I need to call my grandmother. She will worry if I do not. I will send guards to protect her. But you and Gabriel come with me. Now. She looked at Gabriel at the storage room that had been their sanctuary for barely 24 hours at me, with my blood-stained clothes and inhuman eyes. I watched the calculation play across her face, the weighing of terrible options, the moment when survival instinct overrode all other considerations. 5 minutes. She adjusted Gabriel in her arms, moving toward a locker in the corner. I need to get my things. I nodded and stepped
time
back
has
into
come
the
to
main diner
unveil our
area,
strategy.
giving her space while
We must
maintaining
act
enough
decisively and
proximity to
without
intervene if
hesitation.
danger approached. The rain continued its assault on the windows, turning the night into sheets of flowing darkness. Anything could be out there. The rebels who had orchestrated Gabriel's kidnapping, court vampires following my trail, random threats drawn by the scent of royal blood. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Theron. Found 3 more rebel safe houses. All empty. Where are you? I typed a brief response. Found Gabriel. L, returning to Blackthorn. His reply came within seconds. Thank the ancients. Do you need backup? I considered the question. Elena emerged from the back room carrying a worn duffel bag Gabriel still cradled against his shoulder. She had changed out of her uniform into jeans and a heavy sweater, practical clothing for mountain weather. Her face carried the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in 30 hours, but her eyes remained alert. No backup needed. I pocketed the phone. But send 2 guards to this address. I rattled off the diner's location. There is a grandmother who will need protection. Elderly human heart condition. Keep her safe. Theron's response was simply, understood. Elena locked the diner's door behind us, a futile gesture given what I had done to the back room, but I appreciated the instinct toward order.
The
The
time
rain
has
hit
come
us
to unveil our
immediately
strategy.
cold and hard, soaking
We
through
must act
clothes in
decisively
seconds.
and without
I
hesitation.
moved to take Gabriel from her to shelter him from the worst of the storm, and he started to cry the moment my hands touched him. Let me. Elena pulled him close, wrapping her body around his to create a windbreak. Where is your car? I gestured toward the horse tied near the tree line, and her expression shifted to disbelief. You rode a horse in this storm to a diner in the middle of nowhere. The alternative was shadow stepping. I moved to untie the reins. That tends to be dramatic views, particularly mornings. She stared at the horse at me, at Gabriel sleeping peacefully despite the downpour. This is insane. This entire situation is completely insane. Welcome to my world. I swung into the saddle and held out my hand. Give me Gabriel, then not. He will not identify. I settled Gabriel against my chest, feeling him squirm and whimper, radiating displeasure. But we have no choice. It is 8 miles to the monastery, and time is critical. Elena climbed up behind me with the awkwardness of someone unaccustomed to horses. She wrapped her arms around my waist, and I felt the warmth of her mortal body against my back. The rapid beat of her heart, the scent of fear and determination, mingled with cheap shampoo and diner grease. Hold tight, I urged the horse into motion. This will not be pleasant. The ride through the storm was every bit
The time has come to
nightmare I had
unveil our
anticipated.
strategy. We
Gabriel
must
cried
act
for the first
decisively
3
and
miles,
without
his
hesitation.
distress cutting through wind and thunder. Elena clung to me, shivering despite her heavy clothing, whispering soothing words to my son that he could not possibly hear over the weather. I pushed the horse as fast as safety allowed, following the mountain road that would take us to Blackthorn Monastery. The building rose from the darkness like a monument to forgotten faith. Built in 1873 by Jesuit missionaries, abandoned in 1932, when the last priest died without replacement, it had stood empty for 9 decades. I had purchased the property 70 years ago as a potential safe house, then largely ignored it. Stone walls 2 feet thick, limited entrances, consecrated ground that would repel younger vampires. Tonight, it would serve as a sanctuary. I dismounted and held Elena down, taking Gabriel from her arms despite his immediate protest. My son had cried himself into exhausted half-sleep, too tired to maintain full resistance. I carried him through the heavy oak doors while Elena followed her duffel bag clutched in shaking hands. The interior smelled of dust and age and the particular cold that comes from decades without warmth. I had arranged for minimal furnishings months ago, part of contingency planning I had never expected to need. A few beds, basic supplies. Nothing comfortable but sufficient for
The
short-term
time has come
occupation.
to unveil our strategy.
2 vampires
We must
materialized
act
from shadows
decisively
near
and
the
without
entrance.
hesitation.
Victor and Kira, members of my personal guard, answering the summons I had sent while still at the diner. Both were young by court standards, barely a century old, but loyal and capable. My king. Victor's gaze swept over Elena with poorly concealed suspicion. Is this the human? This is Elena Hayes. I handed Gabriel to her, and he settled immediately, his cries subsiding into sniffles. She saved the prince's life. She is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her will answer to me directly. Kira's expression remained neutral. Understood. What are our orders? Guard all entrances. Let no one pass without my express permission. I moved toward the interior chambers. The monastery is warded with old magic. Nothing should be able to breach it, but remain vigilant. And if the court asked questions, Victor's tone suggested this was more than hypothetical. Tell them I will address the court when I return. I stopped at the doorway to what had once been a monk's cell, now furnished with a simple bed and table. This is secure. Rest here. I will return before dawn. Elena looked around the sparse room at the narrow window, with its view of rain-lashed mountains, at the bed that had clearly not been used in years. Where are you going to deal with the political situation your presence has created?
The time
I
has come
softened
to
my
unveil our
tone
strategy.
slightly, recognizing her
We must act
exhaustion.
decisively
The
and
court
without
needs to
hesitation.
understand what happened, why you are here. Otherwise, we will have another crisis before this one is resolved. She nodded, moving to the bed and sitting carefully, Gabriel still in her arms. How long will you be gone? Hours at most. I will not leave you unprotected longer than necessary. And my grandmother guards are being dispatched as we speak. She will be safe. I paused at the door, studying the tableau they made. Mortal woman and half-vampire infant, exhausted and scared, and somehow peaceful together. You should try to sleep. Gabriel will need you rested. Elena met my eyes, and I saw the question there. The one she was too polite or too frightened to voice. Yes, I prompted. Why are you doing this? The grip tightened. You could take it. You are king. You do not need my permission or cooperation. So why go through the effort of keeping me alive? The honest answer would have been, because my son will not eat or sleep without you, and I cannot afford for him to die after finally recovering him. But looking at her face at the hope and fear warring there, I found myself offering something closer to truth. Because Serafina told me to let Gabriel know love before power, I never understood what she meant until I saw you holding him. You gave my son something I do not know how to offer.
The time has
Until
come
I
to
learned
unveil
I
our
need
strategy.
you alive. The
We must
admission
act
cost me,
decisively
but
and without
Elena's
hesitation.
expression shifted. Not relief exactly, something more complex. Understanding perhaps, or the beginning of it. I will keep him safe. Her voice carried quiet conviction. Whatever happens, I will protect him. I know. That is why you are here. I left before she could respond, closing the door behind me and moving through the monastery's cold corridors. Victor and Kira had taken positions flanking the main entrance, weapons visible, postures alert. They watched me approach with the wariness of soldiers who had seen too much blood in recent days. No one enters this building without my direct authorization. I kept my voice low but firm. I do not care if they are court nobles. I do not care if they claim emergency. If I return to find either of them armed, you will pray for the mercy of execution. Victor shifted uncomfortably. My king, what if the court demands? Then they will learn that my word is still law. I met his eyes, letting him see the absolute conviction there. The humans saved my son when our entire military apparatus failed to do so. That grants her protections no decree can revoke. Am I clear, Crystal? Kira's hand rested on her sword hilt. We will hold this position. I stepped into the rain and let the transformation take me. Shadow stepping was disorienting for mortals, but vampires could navigate it with practice.
Without hesitation.
The world dissolved into streams of darkness and reformed 8 miles north, depositing me in the throne room of Blackthorn Castle. Theron stood waiting near the dais, his ancient face lined with concern. You look like hell. I feel worse. I moved to the throne, but did not sit pacing instead. What is the situation? The court is in chaos. He gestured to the empty hall, which would normally be filled with petitioners and courtiers. Marcus called an emergency session within an hour of your disappearance. They have been debating your fitness to rule since midnight. My fitness? I barked a laugh devoid of humor. Because I left to search for my kidnapped son. Because you spent 3 days on a manhunt that killed 27 vampires, destabilized 3 territories, and ended with you bringing a human into the inner circle. Theron's expression carried no judgment, just statement of fact. They question your priorities, your mental state, whether grief has compromised your judgment. And what do you think I stopped pacing, facing him directly? Am I compromised? He considered the question with the careful deliberation I had come to value over 3 centuries of friendship. You are a father who almost lost his child. That kind of fear makes anyone act irrationally. But irrational does not mean wrong. I need to address the court. How many are assembled?
The time has
83
come
at
to
last
unveil
count.
our strategy.
The major houses are
We
all
must act
represented.
decisively and
And
without
Marcus has
hesitation.
been vocal. Of course he has. I straightened my clothes futile, given their condition, and moved toward the Great Hall. Let us get this over with. The throne room doors opened to reveal a sea of pale faces turned in my direction. Nobles in formal court dress, soldiers in military regalia, advisors clustered in whispering groups. The conversations died as I entered, silence falling like a blade. Marcus Ashford stood in the center of the space normally reserved for formal petitions. He wore his commander's uniform, the scar across his face standing out livid against pale skin. When our eyes met, I saw something shift in his expression. Not quite hostility, something older. Grief turned my king. His voice carried in every corner of the vast room. We are relieved to see you return safely. Are you? I mounted the dais steps, slowly claiming the throne with deliberate authority. Because I heard you have been questioning my fitness to rule. A ripple of discomfort moved through the assembly. Marcus did not flinch. We question your judgment. Not out of malice, but concern. You have been king for 4.5 centuries, Dante. In that time, you have never abandoned your post for a personal matter. Yet for 3 days, you pursued a single child while the kingdom
The time has
descended
come
into
to unveil our
uncertainty.
strategy.
A single
We
child
must
who
act
happens to be the
decisively
crown
and without
prince.
hesitation.
I let steel enter my voice. my son, my heir. Are you suggesting I should have prioritized paperwork over recovering him? I am suggesting that a king who cannot protect his own nursery might lack the capacity to protect his kingdom. Marcus moved closer to the dais, addressing the room as much as me. 6 guards died. The royal heir was stolen from beneath our noses. And now we discover he was found not by a military might, not by a vast intelligence network, but by a human waitress working a night shift. The words hit their target. I saw nobles exchanging glances, heard the whispered agreements. Marcus had marshaled his argument, well building a case that indicted not just the rebel attack, but the You are correct. The admission shocked the room into silence. I failed to protect Gabriel, failed to anticipate the rebel attack, failed to secure my own castle against internal threats. I paused, letting the confession settle. Does that satisfy you? Or would you prefer I abdicate immediately and spare you the burden of an incompetent king? Marcus's expression flickered with something I could not quite read. Satisfaction, or was it uncertainty? We do not want your abdication. Theron stepped forward, his aged voice carrying authority. We want assurance that measures will be taken, that this failure will not be repeated.
And without hesitation.
What measures? I leaned forward, a genuine curiosity in the question. More guards, harsher interrogations. Shall I imprison every vampire who shows the slightest sympathy toward human integration? Tell me, Theron, what would you have me do? Start by explaining why a mortal now resides under royal protection. Lady Isolde Blackthorn emerged from the crowd, elegant and lethal in crimson. We hear you have installed a human at the monastery, that you have assigned her as Gabriel's caretaker. This seems unorthodox. I met her eyes reading the calculation there. Isolde had been Seraphina's closest friend, her lady-in-waiting for a century. She had expected to claim some role in Gabriel's life, and my choice had come. Is it unorthodox to honor someone who saved my son's life? Should I have killed her for her kindness? You could have rewarded her and sent her away. Isolde's voice remained smooth, but I heard the edge beneath. Instead, you have brought her into the inner circle, made her essential to the prince's well-being. Why? Because Gabriel will not eat or sleep without her. The blunt truth seemed the only option. Whatever occurred during the time she cared for him, a bond was formed. Breaking it now could harm my son. So yes, I have chosen to keep her close, for Gabriel's sake. And how long does this arrangement continue? Marcus crossed his arms.
We must act decisively
until
and
Gabriel
without hesitation.
outgrows his infant attachment? Or are you suggesting we raise the crown prince under human influence indefinitely? I have not decided. I rose from the throne, descending the steps to stand level with the assembly. What I know is this: Elena Hayes found my dying son in a dumpster and saved his life. She asked for nothing, expected nothing, simply showed mercy to a child in need. That kind of courage and compassion deserves recognition, not punishment. Beautiful words. Marcus's voice turned cold. Your great-grandmother spoke beautiful words too when she declared the cradle song royal property. Told us it was for unity, for tradition. Those words killed me. She died with a broken heart, forbidden to sing the one thing that connected her to her ancestors. The room went deathly still. Marcus's mother's death was known history, but he had never before accused my bloodline so directly. I saw Theron tense, preparing to defend my honor. I raised a hand, stopping him. You are right. I met Marcus's gaze, fully refusing to look away. My great-grandmother made that decree. My grandmother enforced it. My mother upheld it. And I, when I took the throne 50 years before your mother died, did nothing to reverse it. I could have. I should have. But I believe tradition mattered more than one woman's grief.
The time has come to
the
unveil our
admission rippled
strategy.
through the crowd like
We
physical
must act
shockwave.
decisively and without
Kings
hesitation.
did not apologize, did not acknowledge ancestral wrongs, did not admit fault before their subjects. Your mother deserved better. I continued, each word costing me. She deserved to sing her family's song without fear of royal retribution. And Gabriel deserves to hear it, regardless of who teaches him. The cradle song was never ours to claim. It belonged to the mountains and the people who lived there long before our bloodline existed. What are you saying? Isolde's voice carried dangerous curiosity. I am saying the decree is revoked. I turned to address the full assembly. As of this moment, the cradle song returns to public domain. Anyone may sing it, teach it. It was stolen heritage and I am returning it. The room erupted. No over tradition and precedent, soldiers uncertain whether to celebrate or protest. Marcus stood frozen shock written across his scarred features. Furthermore, I raised my voice over the chaos. Any vampire who harms a human, who aids our kind, will answer to me personally. We have spent too long isolating ourselves, building walls, calling it strength when it was just fear. Fear of change, fear of being vulnerable, fear of admitting we might be wrong. I looked around the room, meeting eyes,
The
challenging
time has
silences.
come to unveil our
I
strategy.
have been king for
We must act
450 years.
decisively and without
In that
hesitation.
time, I have conquered territories, defended borders, maintained our traditions. But I have also grown hollow, distant, so focused on power that I forgot what power is meant to protect. My son does not recognize me. My wife died disappointed in who I had become, and it took a mortal stranger to show me how far I had fallen. Theron stepped closer. What are you proposing? Reform. Actual reform, not just empty promises. I moved back to the throne, claiming it with renewed purpose. We opened selected territories to human-vampire cooperation. We established protections for humans who aid our kind. We rebuild our security apparatus from the ground up because clearly the current system failed spectacularly. And if we refuse Marcus's voice carry quiet challenge, then vote me out and exile. I am offering you a choice. Support these changes or choose new leadership. But I will not continue ruling the way I have been. Not when it cost me everything that mattered. The silence stretched. I watched calculations play across noble faces, political alliances, shifting in real time. Finally, Theron spoke. I vote to give you a chance. His ancient voice resonated with authority. Not because I agree with everything proposed, but because I have known you 300 years, and this is the first time I have heard you admit fault.
The time has
That
come to
deserves
unveil our
opportunity
strategy.
to prove whether
We
words
must act
translate to
decisively
action.
and without hesitation.
Others began to voice agreement, tentative at first, then with growing conviction. Not unanimous. I saw at least 20 nobles whose expressions promised future resistance, but enough supported the proposal to prevent immediate rebellion. Marcus remained silent through the voting. When the count reached 38 in favor, 38 opposed, all eyes turned to him. The commander's vote would break the tie. I came here for revenge. His voice was steady, each word carefully chosen. To watch you suffer as I suffered. To take from you what was taken from me. But revenge is hollow. It will not resurrect my mother. Will not undo 2 centuries of grief. He paused, and I saw the internal war. You know what would honor her memory. Making sure no one else loses their mother to royal decree. Making sure songs are not stolen. Making sure humans and vampires who show kindness are not punished for it. He looked at me directly. I do not forgive you. Cannot. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I will give you one chance to be better than your ancestors. One. The word hung in the air. Then Marcus raised his hand. I vote yes. The room released its collective breath. 39 to 38. I retained the
The time
throne
has
by
come
a
to
single
unveil
vote.
our strategy.
It should have felt like
We must
victory.
act decisively
Instead,
and
I
without
felt
hesitation.
only the weight of expectations I was not certain I could fulfill. But I have conditions. Marcus stepped forward. Elena Hayes stays, but she is tested. If she falters, if she shows any sign of using Gabriel for personal gain or power, I remove her myself. Agreed? Agreed, I nodded. Second, you personally apologize to every family affected by the song decree. 47 families. In person, you hear their stories. You acknowledge what was taken. The scope of that task settled over me like lead weight. 47 personal visits. 47 confrontations with grief I had enabled through inaction. It would take weeks, months perhaps, but I had last condition. Marcus's expression carried unexpected vulnerability. You teach me to be Gabriel's godfather. I want to make sure he knows his real heritage, not the stolen version, the truth of where his song came from. I stared at him, searching for deception and finding only earnest intent. You want to help raise him? Someone needs to make sure he does not become you. Marcus's lips quirked in something almost like a smile. Might as well be me. The irony struck me. My harshest critic becoming my son's spiritual guardian. But
The time has
perhaps that
come
was
to unveil our
exactly what
strategy.
Gabriel needed.
We must act
Someone to
decisively
balance
and
my
without
influence.
hesitation.
Someone who would not let tradition and power override compassion. Very well. I extended my hand. Godfather Marcus, May you teach my son what I clearly failed to learn. He clasped my hand, his grip firm. Do not make me regret this. I will try not to. The assembly began to disperse, nobles clustering in small groups to process what had just occurred. Theron approached the dais, his expression mixing with political concern. That was risky. His voice dropped low. You gave Marcus enormous power over Gabriel's upbringing. I gave him what he earned through 2 centuries of justified anger. I watched Marcus confer with several soldiers across the room. And perhaps someone who will not hesitate to tell me that I am wrong. Assuming he does not simply take Gabriel and disappear, he will not. I surprised myself with the certainty. Despite everything, despite the history and the pain, Marcus wants the same thing I do. A better future for Gabriel. We simply disagree on methodology. Let us hope you are right. Theron glanced toward the windows where pre-dawn light was beginning to gray the darkness. You should return to the monastery soon, before the sun makes travel difficult. Go ahead of me. I need a moment. He departed, leaving me alone in the vast
The time
throne
has
room.
come to
I
unveil
stood
our
at the
strategy.
base of the dais,
We
looking
must
up
act
at the seat I
decisively
had
and without
occupied for
hesitation.
4.5 centuries. How many decisions had I made from that throne? How many lives altered futures, shaped traditions, enforced? The weight of it all pressed down, suddenly suffocating. Serafina had sat beside me for 100 years, advising, tempering my harsher impulses with her wisdom. I had thought myself complete with her partnership, but now I understood we had been performing roles rather than living truth. King and queen, never quite touching the vulnerability that real intimacy required. She had known, had tried to tell me in 100 subtle ways that power was making me hollow. I had dismissed her concerns as female emotionality, as if tenderness was weakness rather than the foundation everything else rested on. Gabriel had seen it immediately. An infant barely 3 months old, and he recognized what I had spent centuries denying, that I was monument pretending to be man, stone wrapped in flesh, a king who had forgotten how to be human. The words of the rebel captain echo back, "You are a monster, Corvinus. Your own son would have been just another weapon in your arsenal." Was she right? If Gabriel had grown up under my sole influence, would I have shaped him into another monument, another hollow ruler who commanded through fear and
The
called
time
it
has
strength?
come to unveil our
I
strategy.
needed Elena,
We
not
must
just
act
because
decisively
Gabriel
and
attached
without
to her,
hesitation.
but because she represented everything I had lost. Compassion without calculation, kindness without expectation of return. The ability to see a suffering creature and simply help regardless of cost or consequence. She had risked her life for my son, not for reward or political advantage, not because she understood the implications or sought recognition, just because it was right. When had I last done anything purely because it was right? I could not remember. Every decision filtered through political considerations, strategic advantage, maintenance of power and tradition. Morality had become subordinate to expediency, so gradually I had not noticed it until a mortal waitress showed me what I had become. The pre-dawn light strengthened, painting the throne room in shades of gray. I needed to return to the monastery before full sunrise. Needed to check on Gabriel and Elena, ensure their safety, begin the process of learning what fatherhood actually meant. But first I allowed myself one moment of honest grief. For Serafina, for the husband I had failed to be. For the 450 years spent building a kingdom on foundations of stone when it should have been built on grace, I wept. Not dramatically, not with the theatrical mourning I had performed at her funeral.
The time has come to
Just
unveil our
quiet
strategy.
tears falling in an empty room,
We must act decisively
releasing
and
grief
without
I had
hesitation.
suppressed beneath duty and tradition. When the tears stopped, I felt lighter, not cleansed. That would take far more than a single moment of vulnerability, but fractionally more human than I had been in centuries. I shadow-stepped back to the monastery just as dawn broke over the mountains. The wards recognized me, permitting passage. Victor and Kira remained at their posts, alert despite the long night. Any problems, I asked? None. Victor's expression carried through. The human and the prince had been quiet. I moved through the cold corridors to Elena's chamber. The door stood slightly ajar, and I could hear soft sounds from within. Humming. That same melody, the lullaby that had survived centuries of suppression. I pushed the door open carefully. Elena sat on the bed, Gabriel cradled in her arms. She had changed him into clothes from somewhere, her duffel perhaps, and he wore a simple onesie that looked absurdly mundane on the crown prince. Both appeared freshly washed, Elena's hair still damp. She looked up as I entered, and I saw awareness flash across her face before she controlled it. "You came back. I said I would." I moved closer, drawn by the peaceful scene. "How is he?" "He ate, slept a few hours, woke up fussy but settled once I sang to him." She looked down at Gabriel with such tenderness it hurt to
The
witness.
time has come
He
to
is a good
unveil our
baby,
strategy.
considering
We must
everything he
act
has been
decisively
through.
and without
"May
hesitation.
I gestured toward the bed. Elena hesitated, then shifted to make room. I sat carefully, maintaining distance, unsure of my welcome. Gabriel noticed me and made a questioning sound, not quite distressed, but approaching it. "Hey," Elena's voice softened. "That is your papa. He is not going to hurt you." Gabriel did not appear convinced. His small face scrunched in preparation for crying, and I felt the familiar helplessness settle. What was I doing wrong? What signal was I sending that made my own son fear me? "Let me try something." Elena adjusted Gabriel, turning him more toward me. "Hold out your hand." I extended my hand, palm up, feeling ridiculous. Gabriel stared at it with grave suspicion. "Talk to him." Not commands, just talk. Like he is a person, not a subordinate. What do I say? Whatever is true. I looked at my son, at those red eyes so like mine, at the small face still learning what expressions meant. Truth. What was the truth? "I am sorry." The words emerged quiet, unpracticed. "I am sorry I was not there when they took you. Sorry I did not protect you. Sorry I do not know how to be the father you need." Gabriel's crying impulse paused. He watched me with the intensity peculiar to infants, as if trying to decode meaning from tone rather than words.
The time has
"I'm
come
going to
to
try,
unveil
though."
our
I
strategy.
kept talking, letting
We
the
must
truth
act
flow.
decisively
"I
and
am
without
going to
hesitation.
learn. Elena is going to teach me. And Uncle Marcus, even though that is going to be strange. We are all going to help you grow up knowing love, not just power." Gabriel's small hand reached toward my extended palm, touched it, curled tiny fingers around my thumb with surprising strength. The contact hit like electricity. My son, holding my hand, choosing for the first time since his birth to accept my touch. "That is it." Elena's voice carried warmth. "See, he just needed to hear that you are trying." I stared at Gabriel's hand wrapped around my thumb, at the physical connection we had never quite managed before this moment. Something shifted in my chest. "Can I hold him?" The question came out tentative, stripped of royal authority. Elena transferred Gabriel into my arms with careful movements. He squirmed briefly, uncertain, then settled against my chest. I felt his heartbeat rapid and strong, felt the warmth of half-human blood, smelled milk and clean baby, and something indefinably precious. "Hi," I whispered it like prayer. "Hi, Gabriel. I am your father. We are going to figure this out." He made a small sound, not crying, not quite contentment, something in between.
The time has come
Acceptance,
to unveil
perhaps,
our strategy.
or at least willingness
We
to
must
try.
act decisively and
Elena
without
watched us
hesitation.
with shining eyes. "You are doing great. I am terrified. That is what makes you a good father." She smiled slightly. "Bad fathers are certain they know everything." We sat in silence as dawnlight crept through the narrow window, painting the sparse room in shades of gold. Outside, the rain had stopped. Birds began their morning songs. The world continued its rotation, indifferent to the small miracle occurring in a forgotten monster. "I need to tell you what happened at the court." I kept my voice low, not wanting to disturb Gabriel's fragile peace. "There will be changes, reforms. Some of my people will resist." "Am I in danger?" Direct question, deserving direct answer. "Yes." I meant, not from me, but from those who see you as threat to tradition. "I have assigned guards, implemented protections, done everything I can. But complete safety is impossible." She nodded slowly, absorbing this. "And Gabriel is crown prince. Attacks on him will be attacks on the throne itself. That carries its own protections." I adjusted my hold as he shifted. "But you are human, mortal, vulnerable in ways he is not. So what do I do?" Her voice carried steel beneath the fear. "Hide forever. Let you lock me in this monastery until Gabriel
The time has
outgrows
come
his
to unveil our
attachment?" No.
strategy.
I looked
must
down
act
at my
decisively
son,
and
at
without
the peace on his
hesitation.
small face. "You live. You teach him. You show me what it means to parent with grace instead of authority. And when the time comes, you decide whether to stay or return to your old life." You would let me leave, the question held disbelief. I would hate it. Honesty seemed important. Gabriel would struggle. I would fail again at solo parenting. But your life is yours, Elena. I will not imprison you for the crime of showing mercy. She studied my face, searching for deception. I let her look, offering no defenses, no royal masks, just exhaustion and sincerity in desperate hope that she would choose to stay. I need to think. She finally said, "This is a lot. I understand." I rose carefully, Gabriel still cradled against my shoulder. "Rest, recover. We have time. Do we?" Her eyes carried knowledge beyond her years, because it sounds like your cord is fracturing and enemies are circling, and time is the one thing we do not have. Perhaps not. I moved toward the door, but we have this moment. Let that be enough for now. I returned Gabriel to her arms, feeling the loss of his weight like physical pain. He settled immediately against her chest, making those small content sounds reserved for her alone. The sight should have caused jealousy. Instead, I felt only gratitude that my son had found safety, even if it was not with me.
We must act decisively and without hesitation.
I told her. "Both of you, I will have food brought in a few hours." She nodded already, lying back, Gabriel tucked close. I watched them for another moment, memorizing the scene. Mortal woman and half-vampire heir, exhausted and vulnerable, and somehow perfect together. Then I withdrew, closing the door softly, and went to find Theron. He waited in what had once been the monastery's library, now mostly empty shelves and dust. The morning sun slanted through tall windows, and he stood in a beam of light that would have incinerated younger vampires. Age had its privileges. "How did it go?" he asked without preamble. Better than I deserved. I slumped into a wooden chair that creaked under my weight. Gabriel let me hold it. Not long, but it is a start. And Elena terrified, exhausted, thinking about whether to stay or run. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the weight of 3 days without rest. I do not blame her. This situation is insane. You could compel her. Theron's tone suggested he was testing rather than advising. Make her stay through supernatural influence and become exactly what the rebels accused me of being. I shook my head. No, she stays by choice or not at all. Noble. He settled into a chair opposite. Also risky. If she leaves, Gabriel suffers.
The time
if
has come to
Gabriel
unveil our
suffers, you
strategy.
suffer. If you suffer, the kingdom destabilizes further. Then I will simply have to convince her that staying is worthwhile. I met his ancient gaze. Teach me, Theron. You raised 6 children before your transformation. How do I become someone Gabriel can trust? The question seemed to surprise him. His expression softened, centuries of experience shifting behind his eyes. You already started. He gestured toward the chamber, where Elena and Gabriel slept. You admitted ignorance, asked for help, showed vulnerability. Those are the foundations. What else? Consistency. Show up every day, even when it is difficult, especially then. He leaned back. Children do not need perfection. They need presence. They need to know you will not abandon them when things get hard. I abandoned Seraphina when childbirth got hard. The admission burned, left her laboring while I handled kingdom business. Returned too late to say goodbye properly. Then do better with Gabriel. Theron's voice carried no judgment. The past cannot be changed. Only learn from. I sat with that truth, feeling its weight. The mistakes I had made were permanent. Seraphina died disappointed. Gabriel spent his first 3 months barely knowing me. Those failures would shape the future regardless of my efforts now. But perhaps that was the point. Not to erase history, but to build better patterns going forward.
We must act decisively and
Marcus
without
wants to be
hesitation.
godfather. I changed the subject slightly. What do you think? I think Marcus is angry and grieving and looking for purpose. Theron considered the question carefully. But I also think he genuinely wants better for Gabriel. Those motivations can coexist. And if he turns Gabriel against me, then you have to earn your son's respect enough that Gabriel sees both sides. Theron smiled slightly. Parenting is not about control. It is about influence. You shape without forcing, guide without commanding, trust without blind faith. That sounds impossibly difficult. It is. He rose, moving to the window. But the alternative is what you have been doing. And that clearly is not working. Point taken. I joined him at the window, looking out over the mountains. Dawn had fully arrived, painting the peaks in golden shadow. Somewhere out there, 47 families waited for apologies I had never thought to offer. The court balanced on a single vote between support and rebellion. And in this forgotten monastery, my son slept in the arms of a stranger who had shown him more love in 30 hours than I had managed in 3 months. The scope of my failure was staggering. But for the first time in centuries, I felt something other than numb acceptance. I felt determination.
The time has come to
Not the
unveil our
cold resolve
strategy.
of a king.
We must act
Something
decisively
warmer.
and without hesitation.
A father's stubborn refusal to give up. I'm going to learn to sing that lullaby. The declaration emerged firm. Marcus will teach me the words. I will practice until my voice does not crack. And I will sing it to Gabriel. Every night until he knows I am trying, Theron's hands settle on my shoulder. That is a good start. We stood together watching the sunrise, two ancient vampires seeking wisdom in the simple act of day. Outside, birds sang their territorial claims and honey cries. The world continued indifferent to vampire politics and royal drama. But inside this monastery, something new was growing. Fragile as first shoots through snow, but real. The possibility that a tyrant could learn gentleness, that a hollow king could find substance, that a father who had never learned love might discover it in the patient work of showing up day after day until trust built from accumulated moments of presence. It would not be easy. The court would resist. Enemies would strike. Elena might leave. Gabriel might never fully forgive my early absence. But I would try anyway. Because Serafina had asked me to. Because Gabriel deserved it. Because Elena had shown me what trying looked like. And because for the first time in 450 years, I wanted to be someone worthy of my son's love more than I wanted to be king.
The time has come to unveil our strategy.
The sun climbed higher.
We must act
Day fully
decisively and
arrived.
without hesitation.
And in a small chamber down the hall, a mortal woman sang an ancient song to a vampire prince, teaching him the first lessons of a kingdom built on cradles instead of crowns. I listened to that melody drift through stone corridors, memorizing its contours, preparing to learn what my wife had tried to teach me before death stole her voice. This time I would not fail to listen. This time I would learn the song. 2 weeks passed in the monastery like water under snow, slow erosion of certainty into something more fluid. I traveled daily between Blackthorn Castle and the sanctuary, splitting existence between king and father, neither role fitting comfortably yet. Gabriel grew stronger under Elena's care. His cries much his smiles rare and precious, directed always toward her. I remained a curiosity to him, not feared, not precisely, but not trusted either. Marcus arrived on the third day carrying a leather-bound book worn smooth by centuries. His mother's journal, he explained without preamble. The original lyrics to the cradle song filled the first 20 pages, written in her careful hand, annotated with musical notes and performance suggestions. Your great-grandmother banned this in 1825. He set the book on the monastery's stone table. My mother kept singing anyway, quietly. Only to family.
The time has come to
when they
unveil
caught her,
our
she
strategy.
claimed ignorance of the decree.
We must act
They
decisively and
exiled
without
her
hesitation.
anyway. I turned pages carefully, reading words Serafina had never known existed. The lullaby was longer than the fragment she had sung. Verses about mountains and migration, about leaving children in the care of strangers, about trust outlasting blood. Will you teach me? The request came harder than any command I had ever issued. Marcus studied me with those hard eyes, calculation and old grief warring across scarred features. Then he nodded wisely. One verse at a time. You will learn it completely or not at all. We began that evening. Marcus sang with a voice roughened by centuries of violence, but carrying surprising gentleness. I followed, stumbling over pronunciation, struggling with the melodies. Gabriel listened from Elena's arms, his small face serious, evaluating. You are flat on the third line. Marcus corrected, without mercy, again. I repeated the verse, and again, until Marcus's slight nod indicated acceptable competence. Gabriel had fallen asleep by then, exhausted by the drama of my education. Tomorrow, the second verse. Marcus gathered his book. Do not disappoint me. He left before I could respond. Elena rocked Gabriel gently, her expression thoughtful. That was kind of him. Teaching you. Kind is not the word I would choose. I flexed fingers, still tense from gripping my own inadequacy. More like strategic torture. She smiled. He cares about Gabriel. That is what matters. The lessons continued. Marcus appeared each evening with military punctuality. critiqued my failures with surgical precision, and occasionally, very occasionally, offered gruff approval when I finally mastered a particularly difficult passage. By the second week, I could sing the entire lullaby without reference to a text. Not beautiful, but competent. Gabriel's response shifted incrementally. He no longer cried when I held him. Sometimes he even reached for me, tiny hands grasping my collar, pulling himself upright against my chest. Progress measured in finger spans and moments, but progress nonetheless. Then the summons arrived from the court, an emergency session, mandatory attendance. The polite language could not disguise the underlying threat appear or face consequences. I have to return to the castle. I told Elena while packing the few belongings I kept at the monastery. The court wants answers. About me. Her voice carried resignation. About everything, the reforms I proposed. The changes to succession protocol. Whether I have lost my mind keeping a human in the inner circle. Have you, she asked it lightly, but genuine
The
curiosity
time has come to
threaded the
unveil our
question.
strategy.
Lost my mind,
We must
I
act
considered
decisively
honestly.
and without hesitation.
Possibly, or perhaps found it after centuries of misplacing it. Gabriel fussed and she shifted him to her other hip. How long will you be gone? Hours, maybe longer if the session devolves into political theater. I moved to the door, then stopped. Elena, if anything happens, if you sense danger, get Gabriel out. Do not wait for permission or protection. Just run. Her eyes widened. You think they would attack here? I think I have enemies who would prefer the old order restored. And you represent everything they fear. The ride to Blackthorn took 90 minutes, my horse picking careful paths through mountain terrain, still slick from recent rain. Theron met me at the castle gates, his expression. Marcus has been gathering support, not against you specifically. More like building alternative power structures. Alternative to what? To your absolute authority. Theron walked beside me through corridors filled with watching nobles. He wants checks, balances, council approval for major decisions. That sounds dangerously like democracy. That sounds like vampires terrified their king has stopped thinking clearly. He paused outside the Great Hall's doors. Dante, they are not entirely wrong. You have made dramatic changes with minimal consultation.
The time has
Revoked
come to
ancient
unveil our
decrees,
strategy.
elevated a
We must
human
act
to protected
decisively
status,
and without hesitation.
proposed reforms that shake our foundational traditions. Because those foundations were built on injustice, I kept my voice low. Because tradition is not synonymous with correct. I agree, but you need to convince them, not decree it. The Great Hall doors opened to reveal 80 vampires arranged in a semicircle facing the empty throne. Not sitting standing like a tribunal, rather than court assembly. Marcus occupied the Senate position flanked by forecasters. Their collective attention swung toward me with the weight of judgment. My king. Marcus's greeting carried formal distance. Thank you for joining us. You summoned. I did not mount the dais, instead standing level with the assembly. I came. We have concerns. Isolde stepped forward, elegant and dangerous in midnight blue. The reforms you proposed 2 weeks ago were accepted by the narrowest margin. Since then, you have implemented changes without further consultation. We question whether this is wise. Which changes concern you? I kept my tone neutral, refusing to rise to obvious bait. All of them. Lord Castian's voice rumbled like distant thunder. You have revoked the Cradle Song Decree, established protections for humans who aid vampires, begun dismantling security protocols that stood for centuries.
The time has come to
and you have
unveil
done
our
this while
strategy.
spending more time
We
at a
must act
monastery
decisively and
with a
without
mortal
hesitation.
woman than governing your kingdom. The insinuation hung heavy. Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles' agreement building like storm pressure. I see. I looked around the semicircle, meeting eyes, reading the coalition Marcus had constructed. You believe I have abandoned my duties. We believe you are compromised. Marcus's voice cut through the whispers. Grief over Seraphina's death. Fear for Gabriel's safety. These are understandable reasons, but they are clouding your judgment. How convenient. I let steel enter my tone. That every reform threatening your comfortable power structures gets dismissed as emotional compromise. That is not fair, Isolde protested. Fair, I don't. You want to discuss fairness? Let us start with the Cradle Song Decree. Marcus's mother died because my great-grandmother decided a folk melody was too precious for common vampires. Where was fairness in that ancient history? Castian waved dismissively. We cannot relitigate every decision made across 3,000 years. Why not I move closer to the semicircle, forcing them to hold ground or retreat? If we do not examine our history, we are condemned to repeat it. And I am done repeating mistakes that kill innocence and call it tradition. Beautiful rhetoric. Marcus's expression remained neutral.
The time has come
but
to
rhetoric
unveil
does
our
not
strategy.
address our core concern.
We must act
You have stopped
decisively and
consulting
without
this court.
hesitation.
You have made yourself sole arbiter of massive changes. That is tyranny, regardless of how noble your stated intentions. The accusation landed cleanly. I saw approval flicker across multiple faces. Marcus had positioned this perfectly, framing legitimate questions about process rather than outcome, making himself reasonable voice against my autocratic impulses. You are correct. The admission shocked building science. I have been making unilateral decisions, implementing reforms without sufficient input, acting like the tyrant I have been for 4.5 centuries. I pause, letting that settle. But understand this, I am trying to change. Trying to become something better than the monument. That transformation is messy. I will make mistakes. I will overstep. But I cannot continue ruling the way I have been. Theron shifted position slightly. What are you proposing, a council? I looked at Marcus, not advisory, not symbolic, a real governing council with authority to check my decisions. You want democracy? We will build it together. The room erupted, nobles shouting over each other, some excited, others outraged, the carefully constructed semicircle dissolving into chaos. Marcus raised a hand and
The time
gradually
has come to
silence
unveil
returned.
our strategy.
Specifics.
We must
His
act
eyes
decisively
narrowed.
and without
How
hesitation.
would this council function? 12 members. I pulled the framework from calculations I had been developing privately. 4 appointed by me, 4 elected by the noble houses, 4 selected by lot from the general vampire population. All major policy decisions require council approval. I retain emergency powers for immediate threats, but those get reviewed within 48 hours. And if the council votes against your wishes, Castian's skepticism was evident, then the council prevails. Unless I can convince 2/3 majority otherwise, no decree stands on royal authority alone. That is not how vampire kingdoms work. Isolde's voice carried disbelief. Perhaps that is the problem. I met her gaze. Perhaps we have been doing this wrong for 3 millennia. Perhaps it is time to try something new. Marcus studied me with an intensity that felt like physical pressure. What guarantees do we have that you will not simply dissolve this council when it becomes inconvenient? None. Honesty seemed the only viable currency. You have to trust that I mean what I say, that I am genuinely trying to build something better. Trust. He barked a laugh. From the king who enforced the decree that killed my mother. Yes, I did not look away. Trust from the king who failed you and
The time has
46
come
other
to
families.
unveil our strategy.
Who could have prevented those
We must
deaths
act
and chose
decisively and
tradition
without
over justice.
hesitation.
I am asking you to give me what I never gave you, benefit of doubt. The hall went absolutely still. Even the whispers died. I had admitted fault before, but never this publicly, never with such complete acceptance of responsibility. Why should we believe you have changed? Castian's question carried genuine curiosity beneath the challenge. Because my son does not recognize me. The truth tore out the ball. Because I held him 3 days ago, and he cried until I gave him to someone else. Because I spent 100 years with Seraphina and never learned her lullaby. Because I have been king for 450 years and only now realize I have been terrible at it. I spread my hands, offering no defenses. I do not have proof of transformation. I cannot point to some magical moment where scales fell from my eyes and I became enlightened. All I have is the admission that the old way was killing us, killing our connection to humanity, killing our ability to feel anything beyond power and survival. And I am done with it. Silence stretched. I watched calculations play across noble faces, alliances shifting like sand. Finally, Theron spoke from the periphery. I have known Dante 300 years, fought beside him, advised him, watched him build this kingdom into something formidable and feared.
We must
And in
act
all that
decisively
time,
and
I
without
never once
hesitation.
heard him admit weakness. He moved into the semicircle's center. That changed 2 weeks ago. Something in him broke when Gabriel was taken, or perhaps it finally healed. Either way, the vampire standing here now is different from the one I have served for centuries. Whether better or worse remains to be seen, but different Absolutely. Marcus's expression flickered. You support this council proposal. I support giving it a chance. Theron looked around and said, if it fails and Dante reverts to tyranny, we remove him. But if it succeeds, we might build something our children's children thank us for creating. The murmurs returned, but carrying different energy now. Consideration rather than outrage. Marcus conferred quietly on Isolde and Castiel, their heads bent close in conference I could not hear. When they separated, Marcus addressed the full assembly. A vote. All who support establishing this governing council speak now. Hands rose. Not all, perhaps 60%, but a clear majority. Those opposed, the remaining 40%, raised hands. Marcus counted carefully, his expression unreadable. 53 in favor, 27 opposed. The council proposal passes. His gaze locked with mine. But I have conditions. Of course you do. I managed something approaching a smile.
The time has come to
Name
unveil
them.
our strategy.
First, Elena Hayes remains
We must
under
act
protection,
decisively and
but she
without
is not
hesitation.
granted automatic authority. If she abuses Gabriel's attachment for political gain, she is removed. Immediately. Agreed. Second, you complete your apology tour to all 47 families. In person, with genuine contrition, no royal distance or formal speeches. Real conversation. I will begin tomorrow. The prospect filled me with dread, but I owe those families truth. Third, I serve on this council as one of your 4 partners, so I can ensure you follow through. The request surprised me. Having Marcus that close would mean constant challenge, perpetual questioning of my decisions. It would also mean his genuine investment in making the system. You want to help build what you spent 2 weeks trying to limit. I want to make sure you do not betray this moment. His jaw tightened. You offered something unprecedented. I am calling that bet. But if you fail, if you revert to the tyrant you have always been, I will be there to tear down what you built. Fair enough. I extended my hand. Welcome to the governing council, Marcus. He clasped my hand, gripped firm enough to border on painful. Do not make me regret this. I will try not to. The assembly began to disperse, tension bleeding away into relieved conversation. The crisis had passed.
The
for
time
now.
has come to unveil our
I
strategy.
moved toward the exit, planning
We
to
must act
return to the
decisively
monastery
and
when
without
Isolde
hesitation.
intercepted me. A word. Her voice carried the particular urgency that preceded difficult truths. I followed her to a private antechamber, awareness prickling that I was alone with someone who had voted against me. She closed the door and rounded on me with unexpected vehemence. You are making a mistake with that human. We discussed this. I kept my voice even. Gabriel needs her. Gabriel needs stability. Isolde's mask cracked, showing grief beneath polish. Serafina asked me to care for him if anything happened. I was her closest friend for a century. I should be raising him. The revelation shifted the ground beneath our conversation. I had not known about Serafina's request. Had not considered Isolde's pain being overlooked. Why did you not tell me this before? Because you never asked. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You came back from searching with a stranger and declared her Gabriel's guardian. Never consulted me. Never considered that Serafina might have made other arrangements. What did she say exactly? That if she died, I should help raise Gabriel? Teach him about her. Keep her memory alive. Isolde's voice broke. I loved her, Dante. For 100 years I loved her. And she knew. We never acted on it, never betrayed you, but the love was real. And now you have given her child to
decisively and
someone
without
else.
hesitation.
The confession hung between us, painful and honest. I thought of Serafina, of the complexity I had never quite grasped in her relationships, of my own blindness to the depths of feeling surrounding me. I did not know. Inadequate words, but all I had. Of course you did not. Isolde wiped her eyes roughly. You were too busy being king to notice who loved whom. But I notice, and I see that human taking everything it should to begin. She is not taking. I move closer carefully. Elena has no idea about any of this history. She is just trying to help a child. I know. The admission seemed to cost her. I know she is good with him. I know Gabriel loves her. That is what makes it unbearable. We stood in that spot, 2 minutes wrestling very hard. Finally, I spoke. I cannot undo my decision about Elena. Gabriel has attached to her too strongly, but I can offer you what Serafina asked. Help me raise him. Teach him about his mother. Be the connection to her that I cannot provide. Isolde looked at me with naked longing. You would allow that. After I voted against you, you love Serafina. You want what is best for Gabriel. That is all I require. What about the human? She will not want me there. Then we convince her together. I moved toward the door. Come with me.
The time has
Meet
come
Elena
to unveil
properly.
our strategy.
See if you can find common
We must
ground.
act decisively and
The
without
ride
hesitation.
to the monastery passed in tense silence. Isolde rode her own horse, maintaining careful distance, her grief a palpable force. When we arrived, Victor and Kira snapped to attention, weapons visible. Stand down. I dismounted. Lady Isolde is here at my invitation. Elena emerged from the interior, Gabriel on her hip, wariness clear in her posture. She had changed into practical clothes, jeans, and a sweater, but still looked exhausted, carrying her infant vampire, apparently transcendent species in its demands. Elena, this is Isolde Blackthorn. I made the introduction carefully. She was Serafina's closest friend. She has concerns about Gabriel's care. Concerns. Isolde's laughed. That is diplomatic. Elena's grip on Gabriel tightened protectively. If you are here to hurt him, I am here because I should be the one holding him. Isolde's voice cracked. Because Serafina asked me to help raise him. Because I have been shoved aside for a mortal stranger who knows nothing about our world. The air between them crackled with tension. Gabriel sensed it beginning to fuss. Elena swayed automatically, soothing him, and I saw Isolde's expression twist with envy and grief. I did not know. Elena's voice came quieter. About Serafina's
time has come to
request,
unveil our
I am
strategy.
sorry.
We
Sorry
must
does
act
not help.
decisively and without
Isolde
hesitation.
stepped closer. You have taken everything from me. His mother's role, her final wish, the chance to honor what we had. What you had, Elena's eyes narrowed. What does that mean I loved her? Isolde's confession emerged raw. For 100 years I loved Serafina, and she loved me, though we never acted on it. Gabriel is all I have left of her, and you stole even that. Understanding dawned across Elena's face. Oh, yes. Oh, Isolde wiped her eyes again. So forgive me if I resent the mortal who swept in and claimed what should have been mine. Gabriel began to cry properly now, distressed by the adult emotions swirling around him. Elena tried to calm him, but his wails were intense. Then something shifted in his small face. Concentration focused, and I felt power building. Get back. I grabbed Isolde's arm, pulling her away, just as crimson light exploded from Gabriel's small body. The barrier manifested instantly, a dome of pure energy, encasing Elena and Gabriel, while throwing everyone else backward. I hit the monastery wall hard enough to crack stone. Isolde crashed into her horse, which bolted in panic. Victor and Kira rolled into defensive positions, weapons drawn. Inside the barrier, Gabriel's cries had stopped. He stared at the glowing
The time
dome
has come
surrounding
to
them,
unveil
then
our
at
strategy.
Elena, then at the
We
rest
must
of us
act
outside.
decisively and without
Tiny
hesitation.
hands pressed against the barrier's interior, pushing as if trying to reach through. Elena looked terrified. What is happening? Gabriel's protection response. I pushed upright, ribs aching. He sensed threat and reacted. Isolde, you need to leave. Now, no. Isolde stood, dress-torn, hair disheveled. I will not run from Serafina's son. You are triggering his defenses. I moved. Whatever he senses from you, anger, grief, resentment, it registers as danger. Because you are dangerous. Elena's voice cut through sharp and certain. You do not want Gabriel, you want Serafina, and he knows the difference. Isolde stared at Elena and Gabriel as the barrier separated. I watched truth settle across her immortal features like weight. You are right, her voice dropped to whisper. When I look at him, I see her, and it hurts. It hurts so much I can barely stand it. Elena's expression softened. Then you cannot raise him. Not if you see a ghost instead of a child. So what am I supposed to do? Isolde's anguish filled the courtyard. Where does all this love go, if not to him? Help me. Elena shifted Gabriel to her other hip, the barrier rippling,
The
but
time
holding.
has come to unveil our
Teach me about
strategy.
Serafina.
We must
Tell
act
Gabriel
decisively
stories
and
about
without
his mother.
hesitation.
Be his connection to her. She paused, gathering courage. You cannot be his mother, but you can be something else. Something he needs just as much. Someone who knew the woman who gave him life. Who can tell him what she valued, what she hoped for, what she sacrificed. I could do that. Isolde looked at me for confirmation. If Elena agrees, I kept my voice neutral. This has to be her choice. Elena studied Isolde with that particular intensity mortals bring to life or death decisions. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but you have to actually see Gabriel, not Serafina's ghost. The real child in front of you. Isolde approached the barrier slowly. Gabriel watched her with grave suspicion, but the dome's intensity dimmed slightly. She knelt, placing her palm against the glowing surface. I am sorry. Her voice thickened. I am sorry for wanting you to be someone you are not, for seeing your mother instead of you. Gabriel tilted his head, considering. The barrier flickered. I loved her very much. Isolde continued. So much it made me selfish. Made me forget that you need to become yourself, not some echo of her. The barrier dropped. Isolde remained kneeling, not moving, hardly breathing. Gabriel stared at her for a long moment.
The time has
Then he
come to
reached out
unveil
one
our
small
strategy.
hand, touching her voice
We must
where
act
tears tracked
decisively
down
and without
pale skin.
hesitation.
Sad. His first clear word beyond Mama and Papa, spoken with perfect comprehension. Isolde broke. She gathered Gabriel into her arms, careful and gentle, and wept against his small shoulder. Elena stepped back, giving them space, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. I am sad, Isolde whispered into Gabriel's dark hair. But I will try to be happy. For you. Gabriel patted her head, walking with a gesture of a child comforting an adult too young to understand, but old enough to care. We stood witness to grief transforming to love, finding new channels when the old ones closed. When Isolde finally released him, Gabriel went willingly back to Elena, but he kept his eyes on Isolde, Thank you, Isolde told Elena, for letting me, for seeing, I know. Elena's voice carried weary compassion. Grief does strange things, makes us grasp for what we have lost instead of accepting what remains. You sound like you speak from experience. My parents died when I was 10. Elena adjusted Gabriel on her hip. I spent years trying to make my grandmother into them. Finally realized I was missing who she actually was by demanding she be someone else. They stood in the courtyard, mortal and immortal, bound by shared understanding of loss and the
time
work
has come
required
to
to move
unveil our
forward.
strategy.
I felt
We must
something
act
shift in the air
decisively
between
and without hesitation.
them. Not friendship, not yet, but the possibility of it. I should go. Isolde moved toward her horse, which Victor had captured. But I would like to visit, if that is acceptable. Elena looked at me, then back to Isolde. Tuesdays. Come Tuesdays and tell Gabriel about Serafina. One story per visit. A smile broke through Isolde's grief. Tuesdays, I can do that. She mounted and rode away, posture straight, and when she arrived, I watched her disappear into the tree line, then turned to Elena. That was remarkable. What you did, I just told the truth. She carried Gabriel toward the monastery entrance. People are easier to deal with when you remember they are people. I followed Elena inside, back to the small chamber that had become her temporary home. She settled Gabriel for sleep, singing the lullaby in her grandmother's mountain accent. He fought it briefly, then surrendered to exhaustion. When his breathing deepened, Elena spoke without turning. Your court hates me. Most of them fear what you represent. I leaned against the doorframe. Change, loss of control, the possibility that their power structures might dissolve. And Marcus, she finally looked at me. Does he hate me specifically? Marcus
The time
hates
has
what
come
was
to
done to his
unveil our
mother.
strategy.
You are just
We must act
convenient symbol.
decisively and without hesitation.
Great, she pulled a blanket over Gabriel. Nothing like being a walking metaphor for ancestral trauma. Welcome to vampire politics. I allowed myself a small smile, where everything is symbol and nothing is simple. She returned to the chair by the window, exhaustion written in every line of her body. How long can we keep doing this, hiding here, while you juggle court factions and apology tours and council formations that you not know? Honest admission. Until Gabriel is old enough to protect himself. Until the court accepts the new order. Until we find some stability in all this chaos. Or until I die of old age and you have to start over. The bitterness surprised me. You are not going to die. Not anymore. She looked at me sharply. What does that mean, the blood I gave you? The transformation has been slow, but it is happening. Dr. Strang confirmed it yesterday. Her face went pale. You said you would save me. You did not say you would change me. I gave you ancient blood, too potent to be rejected. I kept my voice gentle. I did not know it would cause transformation. Thought you would heal and remain human. But I am not remaining human. Statement, not question. No, you are not. Elena stood moving to the window, staring out at darkness. What am I becoming, half-blood? Neither mortal nor immortal. You will need blood eventually, though not as frequently as full vampires. You will live centuries, maybe millennia. You will be stronger, faster, more resilient than humans, but less powerful than vampires. I did not ask for this, I know, and I am sorry. She turned, anger finally breaking through exhaustion. Sorry you turned me into a monster, and you are sorry you are not a monster. I moved closer. You are someone who saved my son and nearly died for that kindness. I gave you what I had to prevent your death. If that makes you angry, I understand. But I would do it again. Even without my consent, even then. Because the alternative I met her eyes directly. I am not sorry you survived. Only sorry for the cost. She stared at me, fury and grief warring across mortal features that would soon become something else entirely. Then she turned back to the window. Leave, please. I need to think. I withdrew, closing the door behind me. In the hallway, Marcus waited, having arrived while I was inside. His expression suggested he had heard everything. You turned her. Not question, accusation. I saved her. Important distinction. The time has come to unveil our strategy. Without her knowledge or permission.
We must act decisively and without hesitation.
That is exactly the kind of tyrannical behavior the Council is supposed to prevent. The Council did not exist yet. And she was dying. I did what was necessary. Necessary for Gabriel, or necessary for you. The question cut deeper than Marcus knew. Was I preserving Elena for my son's sake? Or had some part of me recognized her value beyond utility? Wanted her survival for reasons I could not quite articulate. Both. Honesty seemed important. Gabriel needs her. But also, she showed me something I had forgotten existed. Kindness without calculation. Love without conditions. I wanted that. Marcus's expression shifted slightly. Almost understanding. Almost. The council meets tomorrow. First session. You should be there. I will be. I move toward the exit. After I visit the first family on my apology list. Where are you starting with yours? With your mother's grave. It seems appropriate. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Dawn, I will meet you there. I rode back to Blackthorn through darkness, thoughts churning. The court had accepted reforms. Isolde had found fragile peace. Marcus was building coalition rather than rebellion.
The time has come to unveil our strategy.
But Elena's anger echoed through it all, justified and raw. I had taken her choice, however good my intentions, had transformed her life irreversibly without permission. The road to tyranny was built on exactly these kinds of decisions, doing what I deemed necessary without consulting those affected. The council could not prevent everything. Some choices happened too fast for consultation. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the existence of oversight made me consider consequences, more carefully anticipate rejections, question my certainty. Or perhaps I was still the tyrant Marcus feared, just better at justifying it to myself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The apology tour, council formation, Elena's transformation accelerating toward completion. Court factions maneuvering for position. But tonight, riding through mountain darkness, I let myself feel the weight of what I had done. To Elena, to Marcus's mother and the 46 other families, to Serafina through neglect, to Gabriel through absence. The list of failures was long. The work of redemption longer, but I had started, finally started, and that would have to be enough. For now. Dawn arrived cold and gray, the kind of November morning that promised snow by nightfall. I stood at the gravesite of Lydia Ashford, Marcus's mother, reading her headstone for the third time.
We must act decisively
Born
and without
1623,
hesitation.
turned 1641, died 1847. The mathematics of vampire mortality made little sense to mortals, but they told the story clearly enough. She had lived 206 years after transformation, then chosen to end her existence rather than continue without her song. Marcus appeared through the trees carrying fresh flowers despite the early hour. Mountain laurel, I noticed. The same plant his mother had used in her garden. You came. I stepped back, giving him space to arrange the flowers. I am trying to keep my word now. He knelt, placing blooms with careful precision. She used to sing while gardening. Every morning before sunrise, said the plants grew better. We stood in silence while he waited. When the arrangement satisfied him, Marcus rose and brushed dirt from his knees. Tell me about her. Not the sanitized version I heard third hand, the real person. He looked at me sharply, searching for mockery and finding only genuine interest. Finally, he spoke. She was stubborn, refused to accept limitations. When they banned the cradle song, she kept singing it anyway. Quieter, yes, only to family, but she would not let them take it from her completely. What happened when they caught her? My great-grandmother's guards dragged her to court.
We must act
I watched
decisively
from the
and without
gallery,
hesitation.
18 years old by human reckoning, powerless to intervene. They demanded she renounce the song, admit it was royal property, beg forgiveness for her transgression. And she sang it louder, right there in the throne room. Every verse perfectly performed while your great-grandmother turned purple with rage. I felt something twist in my chest. Admiration mixed with grief for a woman I had never known, but whose courage shamed my family's pettiness. The exile was merciful by vampire standards. Marcus's voice hardened. They could have executed her. Instead, they banished her to the outer territories. No contact with family, no appeals, just gone. How long? 6 months. He looked at the grave. 6 months of isolation before she walked into sunlight. Left a note saying she would rather burn than live without her voice. The weight of that choice settled over us. I thought of Serafina singing the same melody, ignorant of the blood cost embedded in each note. Thought of Elena humming it unconsciously, carrying forward what Lydia Ashford had died protecting. I am sorry. The words felt microscopic against the enormity of harm. I was king for 50 years before she died. I could have reversed the decree. I chose not to. That choice
The time
killed
has
her
come
as
to
surely
unveil
as
our
if
strategy.
I had struck the match myself.
We must act decisively
Why
and
did you
without
not, Marcus,
hesitation.
turn to face me fully? You were young by our standards, yes, but old enough to question, old enough to see injustice. What stopped you? Pride, arrogance, the belief that tradition justified cruelty. I met his eyes. I thought being king meant enforcing what came before, regardless of whether it was right. Thought questioning my ancestors would weaken my authority. And now I understand that authority built on unquestioned tradition is just another word for tyranny. I gestured at the grave. Your mother knew that, chose death over compliance. I am 4 centuries late learning what she understood instinctively. Marcus studied me with those hard eyes weighing sincerity against centuries of justification. What he saw must have satisfied some internal measure because he nodded once. 46 more graves to visit. His tone carried challenge. 46 more stories like this one. Can you handle it? I have to. Not because it absolves me. Nothing can do that. But because they deserve to be heard. We spent the rest of the morning at his mother's grave. Marcus told stories, her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she had taught him to find beauty in small rebellions. I listened without defending, without explaining, simply bearing witness to a life my family's pride had ended. When the sun climbed toward
The time
noon,
has come to
Marcus
unveil
gathered
our
his
strategy.
flowers and stood.
We must
Tomorrow,
act
the
decisively
Castellan
and without
family.
hesitation.
Their daughter sang the cradle song at her wedding. Your great-grandmother had the marriage annulled and both partners exiled. I will be there. He left me alone with the grave and my thoughts. The apology tour stretched ahead, 46 families, 46 variations on the same theme of power, crushing and beauty. The work would take months, would cost me politically, emotionally, practically. But Lydia Ashford had walked into sunlight rather than surrender her voice. The least I could do was face the consequences of silencing her. I returned to the monastery as afternoon shadows lengthened. Elena sat in the courtyard with Gabriel, teaching him to stack wooden blocks. The simple domesticity of the scene struck me. How did it go? She did not look up from the blocks, harder than expected. I settled onto the stone bench nearby. Marcus's mother chose death over compliance. I spent the morning learning exactly how much my family's pride cost. Gabriel knocked over his tower and laughed. Elena rebuilt it patiently, and I watched the transformation in her movements. Faster than yesterday, more fluid, the half-blood change accelerating. You are angry with me. Statement, not question.
The time has come to unveil
Furious.
our strategy.
She finally met my eyes.
We must act
Also
decisively
grateful.
and without hesitation.
Also terrified. Emotions are complicated when someone saves your life by destroying it. I am not destroying it. Yes, you are. She cut me off gently. My grandmother is 75. She will die in the next decade, maybe sooner. I will watch it happen and keep living. We'll watch everyone I know age and fade while I stay frozen at 28. The reality of what I had done settled heavier. I can research reversing methods. Dr. Strand, there is no reversing. Her voice carried quiet certainty. You gave me ancient blood. It has rewritten everything. I am what you made me now. Gabriel offered her a block oblivious to adult anguish. She took it with a smile. I spoke with my grandmother yesterday. Elena continued building the tower. Told her I would not be coming home for a while. She asked if I was in trouble. I lied and said no. What would you have told her if you had been honest? That I saved a vampire baby and got turned into a monster for my kindness. That I am hiding in a monastery while immortals debate my fate. That I am becoming something I do not understand and can never undo. She paused, hand trembling slightly. But I did not say that because she would worry. Because she has enough problems with her heart condition. Because sometimes protecting people means lying to them. The accusation underneath was clear. I had made choices for her without consultation, justified it as protection, and expected gratitude. No different from my great-grandmother banning songs for the kingdom's supposed good. You are right. I watched Gabriel's small hands work. I took your choice, transformed your existence without permission, called it salvation when it was really just another exercise of power. At least you admitted bitterness etched your words. That is more than most tyrants can manage. We sat in silence, broken only by Gabriel's babbling. The sun tracked westward, painting the courtyard in amber light. Finally, Elena spoke again. Does it get easier? Being what I am becoming, I do. Honest admission, I was turned young, died fully before transition. The half-blood state is rare. Dr. Strand has limited data. Great, so I am an experiment. You are a survivor. I leaned forward. You are someone who showed mercy and paid for it. That is not fair, is not right, but it is what happened. And we work forward from here. Work toward what? Her voice cracked. I cannot go home, cannot return to my old life, cannot even explain to my grandmother why I am changing. What exactly am I working toward? Gabriel chose that moment to stand on wobbly legs, taking 2 unsteady steps toward me before falling into my arms. I caught him reflexively, feeling his weight, his warmth, his absolute trust that I would not let him fall. Toward this, I looked at Elena over Gabriel's head, toward giving him the childhood he deserves, toward building something better than what came before, toward proving that kindness was not mistake, even when it costs everything. Pretty words, but her expression softened slightly. You are an Marcus's teaching, along with the lullaby. Speaking of which, she stood brushing off her jeans. Gabriel needs his afternoon nap. You should try singing to him. Terror flashed through me. What if I fail? Then you fail and try again tomorrow. That is what parents do. She handed Gabriel to me and retreated to the monastery entrance. I stood alone with my son, feeling the weight of expectation and inadequacy. His eyes drooped with exhaustion, but he fought sleep with the stubbornness inherited from both parents. I began to sing, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as the words Marcus had drilled into me emerged muscle memory smooth. The lullaby's ancient melody filled the courtyard, and Gabriel's eyes widened briefly before slowly closing. Sleep, little one, though we may fade. My voice carried over stone and distance. Remember mercy, not the blade. The time has come to unveil our strategy. Those who cradle what is not their own, must act decisively and without hesitation. Makes pure his throne. Gabriel's breathing deepened. I carried him inside, still singing, and settled into the chair by Elena's bed. She watched from the doorway, surprise clear on her face. You learned it, all of it. Marcus is a demanding teacher. I kept my voice low, not wanting to wake Gabriel, but yes, every verse, every note. He would have been proud. Serafina, I mean. She always wanted you to sing. The observation landed softly. I looked at my sleeping son at peace on his small face and felt something shift in my ancient chest. Not quite healing, but the beginning of it. 3 weeks later, the castle gardens showed the first signs of change. Not the dramatic resurrection I had expected, but slow, greening leaves pushing through dead soil, hardy wildflowers taking root where roses had died. I walked the paths with Theron, examining the subtle transformation. The Queen's fountain is flowing. He pointed to the marble structure at the garden's heart. Just a trickle, but it has been dry since Seraphina's death. I approached the fountain, watching water seep from the central statue's base. The Queen had commissioned this piece herself, a woman cradling a child, both rendered in perfect detail. The symbolism struck me differently now that I understood what cradling actually meant. It is because of Elena.
The time has
Theron
come to
settled onto
unveil
a
our
stone
strategy.
bench. Whatever
We
she
must
is
act
doing with
decisively
Gabriel,
and
it is
without
affecting the
hesitation.
castle's magic. How is that possible? She is not vampire. Not fully. The castle does not care about taxonomy. He smiled slightly. It responds to intention. To love offered without condition. To the kind of nurturing energy Seraphina once provided. So the building itself is healing. I knelt by the fountain, letting water run over my fingers. Because a mortal woman is doing the right thing. You are hurting. That counts for something. Gabriel took his first real steps yesterday. I stood shaking water from my hand, walked from Elena to me without falling. He is growing so fast. Hybrid vigor. Theron's expression turned serious. Doctor, Strand's latest report suggests Gabriel will age normally until adolescence, then slow dramatically. He will experience both human childhood and vampire immortality. Best of both, or worst. That depends on how we raise him. Theron rose. The council meets in an hour. You should prepare. The governing council had been meeting weekly since its formation. 12 vampires representing different factions and perspectives gathered to debate policy and check my authority. The sessions were exhausting, endless arguments, procedural disputes, political maneuvering that made my head ache. But they were also working.
The time has come to
Today's
unveil our
agenda
strategy.
concerned human integration.
We must act decisively
Marcus had
and without
proposed
hesitation.
opening 3 villages to mixed populations, establishing trade protocols and conflict resolution systems. The conservative faction opposed it predictably, but the reformists had been gaining ground. I entered the council chamber to find all 12 members already assembled. Marcus presided from the head of the table, not because he held official leadership, but because he had become the coalition's de facto spokesman. My king, his greeting carried forward courtesy he had in public settings. Thank you for joining us. I took my seat at the table's opposite end, deliberately positioning myself as participant rather than authority. What is the debate Lord Castian believes mixed villages will lead to chaos? Marcus's tone remained. He cites historical precedents of human-vampire conflict. Castian stood his bulk imposing even in seated company. Every attempt at integration has failed. Humans fear us. Vampires see them as food. Forcing proximity will only accelerate violence, or it will force adaptation. Lady Mira, one of the elected council members, countered smoothly. Fear thrives in ignorance. Proximity breeds familiarity. The debate raged for 90 minutes. Arguments about security tradition, practical logistics. I spoke only when directly questioned,
The time has come
trying
to
to model
unveil
the
our
collaborative
strategy.
approach Marcus had
We
demanded.
must act decisively
When the
and
vote
without
finally
hesitation.
came, integration passed 7-5. A narrow victory, Castian observed bitterly, one that may cost lives. Then we worked to ensure it does not. I met his eyes across the table. We established safeguards, train mediators, build systems that address concerns before they escalate to violence. Assuming your mortal pet cooperates. Castian's sneer was deliberate provocation. Elena is not my pet. I kept my voice level despite rising anger. She is Gabriel's guardian, and she will have input on integration policy since she understands human perspective better than any of us. You give her too much influence. Castian pressed. She is a half-blood with no political experience and dangerous emotions. That is a recipe for manipulation. Is it Marcus's intervention surprised everyone? Or is it fresh perspective, unencumbered by centuries of failed tradition? The alliance between us was new enough to draw stares. Marcus caught my eye briefly and I saw calculation there. He was not defending Elena out of affection, he was defending the principle she represented. The session ended with integration approved, but implementation delayed pending security reviews. Progress, but frustratingly slow. As the council dispersed, Marcus approached. Walk with me.
The time
We
has
left the
come to
castle through
unveil
the
our
eastern
strategy.
gate following
We
paths
must
that
act
wound through
decisively and
recovering
without
gardens.
hesitation.
Marcus moved in silence until we reached a secluded alcove where eavesdropping would be difficult. Rebels are regrouping. His voice dropped low. Captain Shara survived your attack 3 weeks ago. She is gathering remnants in the northern territories. How many? 10, maybe 12. Not enough to threaten the castle directly, but enough to cause problems. He paused. They are targeting mixed villages, trying to prove integration will fail. When soon, Theron's intelligence suggests within a week. Shara wants a dramatic statement before your reforms take root. Which village, Silver Falls? Marcus's expression was grim. Where you found Gabriel. They know Elena has connections there. Her grandmother still lives in the town. The realization hit like cold water. Rose. They would use her as leverage, as proof that humans associating with vampires suffered consequences. We need to evacuate her. I turned back toward the castle. Get her to safety before already done. Marcus cut me off. I moved her to a secure location yesterday. She thinks it is temporary medical treatment, complimentary care for her heart condition. Thank you. The gratitude emerged genuine. For protecting her. I did not do it for you. His jaw tightened. I did it
The time
because
has come to
terrorizing
unveil our
elderly
strategy.
women is beneath even
We
rebel
must act
tactics.
decisively and without
And because
hesitation.
Gabriel would suffer if his pseudo-grandmother died. We stood in the garden as dusk approached. Somewhere in the northern territories, vampires plotted violence meant to destroy what we were building. In Silver Falls, an elderly woman wondered why strangers had appeared offering free medical care. And in the monastery, Elena sang to a child who would outlive her by millennia. The attack comes regardless. I said it aloud, confirming what we both knew. We can relocate Rose, but Cheryl will find another target. Then we stop her. Marcus's voice carried cold certainty. Permanently. You mean kill her? I mean remove the threat. Whether that requires killing depends on how reasonable she feels. I should be the one. I met his eyes. If this ends in blood, it should be my hands that spill it. Trying to prove something, his question carried edge. Trying to take responsibility. I started toward the castle. Gather your best fighters. We leave at dawn. The attack came sooner than expected. Midnight bells woke me from uneasy sleep. Not alarm bells, those would have been loud, chaotic. These rang with measured precision, the signal for a controlled evacuation. I dressed quickly and emerged to find the castle in organized chaos. Theron met me in the corridor. Shara hit the monastery 20 minutes ago. Victor and Kira held them off long enough
The
to
time
get
has come
Elena
to
and
unveil our
Gabriel into the
strategy.
secured chamber.
We must act
But the
decisively
situation
and
is
without
deteriorating.
hesitation.
How many? 12. All armed, all committed to dying if necessary. I ran, shadow-stepped when quarters allowed, crashed through obstacles when they did not. 8 miles vanished in minutes, and I materialized outside the monastery to find it burning. Not the whole structure, the rebels had been strategic. They had fired specific sections, cutting off escape routes while leaving the secured chamber intact. A siege meant to force surrender rather than immediate slaughter. Victor lay dead near the entrance throat, torn out, eyes still open in surprise. Kira had made it further, dying in the doorway to the secure chamber, with swords still gripped in cooling hands. Their sacrifice had bought time. I found Shara in the main courtyard, commanding her forces with military precision. She saw me and smiled. King Corvinus. Her voice carried across burning chaos. Come to save your pet. Come to end this. I moved forward, drawing the sword I had not carried in decades. Stand down or die. Your choice. She laughed. We are already dead. You made that inevitable when you betrayed our kind for human sentiment. Her soldiers attacked as one. I cut through them like wheat, centuries of combat experience, translating to brutal efficiency.
The
They were
time has come
committed
to
and
unveil our
skilled,
strategy.
but I was ancient
We must act
and furious.
decisively and without
3 died
hesitation.
in the first minute, 2 more in the second. Shara herself fought with desperate brilliance, forcing me to actually focus rather than simply overwhelm. She had clearly studied my style, anticipated my patterns. But knowing my techniques and surviving them were different things. I disarmed her. After 90 seconds, my blade at her throat. She smiled through blood streaming from her mouth. Go ahead, prove me right. Show Gabriel that his father was just a The words froze me. Because she was right. Gabriel was in the secure chamber, hearing everything through stone walls. He would remember this, would know that his father had come home covered in blood and death. I lowered the sword. You get one chance. My voice emerged. Leave, take your survivors, and disappear. If I see you again, I will not hesitate. You are weak. She spat blood at my feet. This mercy will destroy you. Perhaps I step back, but it is the mercy Gabriel deserves to see. She stared at me, confusion and contempt warring across her features. Then she gathered her remaining soldiers, 4 still standing, and withdrew into darkness. I turned toward the secure chamber and found Elena standing in the doorway, Gabriel clutched to her chest. Her eyes glowed amber in the firelight,
The
transformation
time has
nearly
come to
complete.
unveil our strategy.
And I saw something new in
We
her
must act
expression.
decisively and without
Not fear,
hesitation.
understanding. You let them go. Not question, observation. Gabriel was watching. I moved toward them, sword still dripping. I wanted him to see mercy, not slaughter. Even when they tried to kill us, she shifted Gabriel to her other hip. Even when they burned the monastery, especially then. I reached them, and Gabriel surprised me by reaching out with one small hand touching my bloodstained face. Papa, his voice carried perfect clarity. Papa, no hurt. The words hit harder than any blade. I gathered both of them into my arms, feeling Elena's resistance melt into exhausted acceptance. We stood surrounded by fire and death, while my son held with gentle hands teaching me what I should have learned centuries ago. That mercy was not weakness. That choosing life over death, even when death was justified, was the harder path. That Gabriel would remember this moment, would know his father had been strong enough to stop, when stopping cost more than continuing. The monastery burned through the night. By dawn, only stone shells remained. Victor and Kira received proper funerals, their sacrifice honored by the full court. Rose was relocated permanently to castle grounds, given quarters near the garden, where she could tend plants and sing to Gabriel. And
The time
Elena
has come to
completed her
unveil our
transformation into
We
half-blood,
must act decisively
emerging
and
neither
without
mortal
hesitation.
nor immortal, but something new. 6 months later, the formal ceremony took place in the Great Hall. Not the grand spectacle I had once imagined, but an intimate gathering of perhaps 50 vampires who had chosen to embrace change. Elena stood before the assembly in simple midnight blue Gabriel in her arms while Theron conducted the ritual. Elena Hayes, you have been chosen as cradle bearer. Not because of blood or magic, but because a child recognized safety in arms. Do you swear to protect him with your life, to guide him with wisdom, to love him as your own? I do. Her voice carried steady. Even though I am still learning what I have become, even though I am scared, fear makes you honest. I step forward, and honesty makes you trustworthy. I placed the silver medallion around her neck, crescent moon and cradle intertwined. Let it be known, Elena Hayes' family. To harm her is to harm the crown. To honor her is to honor what we are trying to build. The assembly knelt. Not all, perhaps 20, remained standing in silent protest, but enough supported the declaration to make it real. Marcus approached with unexpected solemnity. I also swear, as Godfather, to make sure Gabriel knows the truth about our history, the good and the terrible, so he
The
never
time has come
repeats our
to unveil our
mistakes.
strategy.
Theron raised an eyebrow
We
at
must
the
act
presumption, but I
decisively and
nodded
without
acceptance.
hesitation.
This is unusual. Good. Marcus's rare smile flickered. We could use more unusual. The ceremony concluded without incident. As the hall emptied, I found myself alone with Elena and Gabriel in the gardens that had been slowly greening over months. Gabriel toddled between the wildflowers that now grew alongside struggling roses, his laugh carrying pure joy. Your grandmother asks about you constantly. I watched him explore. Wants to know when you are coming home. This is home now. Elena's voice carried resignation more than contentment. For better or worse. Better, I hope. I caught Gabriel as he stumbled, righting him with gentle hands. Eventually, she looked at me with those amber eyes, half-blood transformation, complete mortality triggered for something stranger. Do you think he will remember, when he is older, that his mother died and his father did not know how to love him, and a stranger had to teach everyone what family meant? Yeah. I set Gabriel down and he immediately resumed exploring. But I hope he also remembers that we tried, that we failed and learned. That love is not something you know instinctively, but something you build day by day, mistake by mistake. Gabriel called out, pointing at a silver flower blooming near the fountain. Both Elena and I moved toward him simultaneously, and I realized we had
The time
become
has
a
come to
unit
unveil
without
our
conscious
strategy.
decision.
We must
Not
act
romance. We were
decisively
too
and without
different,
hesitation.
too complicated, too shaped by trauma for that simplicity. But family, forged in crisis and sustained through stubborn effort. The kingdom had not transformed overnight. 15 vampires had left in protest of reforms. 3 villages resisted integration. Old grudges still festered in corners where tradition valued itself over justice. But in the castle nursery, a hybrid child played with wooden blocks taught by a half-blood mother and a tyrant learned gentleness. And in the gardens, wildflowers grew alongside roses, untamed and beautiful and stubbornly alive. Rose Hayes died peacefully, 18 months later, her heart finally giving out, despite the best medical care and mortal resources. Elena wept for 3 days and I held her while she processed grief I still barely understood. Gabriel asked where Grandma Rose had gone, and we told him the truth that humans were temporary, that love outlasted flesh, that memory was its own kind of immortality. He seemed to accept this with the equanimity of children who have not yet learned to fear death. The apology tour took 9 months to complete. 47 families, 47 stories of loss and resilience, 47 graves where I knelt and admitted culpability without expectation of forgiveness.
The time has
Some
come to
families
unveil
cursed
our
me.
strategy.
Some accepted the
We
apology
must
with
act
grace.
decisively and without
Most simply
hesitation.
listened, hollow-eyed, while I acknowledged harm my inaction had enabled. Marcus accompanied me to each one, bearing witness, ensuring I did not retreat into royal distance when confrontation became uncomfortable. By the end, something had shifted between us. Not friendship, the wounds were too deep for that, but mutual respect. Alliance born from shared purpose rather than personal affection. The council grew into its authority, gradually checking my decisions, forcing consultation, and occasionally overruling when majority disagreed with my judgment. It was infuriating and necessary and exactly what the kingdom needed. Gabriel grew fast, showing both human warmth and vampire strength. By age 2, he could speak in complete sentence, reason for complex ideas, display empathy that suggested Seraphina's influence, transcending death. He called Elena Mama, called me Papa, called Marcus Uncle, and Isolde Auntie Eso. He knew his birth mother through stories, but seemed unbothered by her absence, the living family surrounding him apparently sufficient. On his 3rd birthday, we gathered in the garden that had now fully recovered. Not Seraphina's formal roses, but a wilder growth, mixing human wildflowers with vampire night-blooming species. The fountain flowed steadily, water clear and sweet. And the enchanted glass of the castle, designed centuries ago to filter deadly sunlight, had begun to transform.
Decisively and without
The
hesitation.
change was slow, gradual warming of the light it produced. One day I noticed I could stand in a beam without discomfort, then without the usual prickling awareness of danger. Then with actual warmth seeping into immortal flesh that had not felt sun in 450 years. The curse was lifting, not dramatically, not with theatrical pronouncement, just fading as if the castle itself had decided mercy reserved better than darkness. I stood in that warm, light eyes closed, feeling something I had not experienced since my mortal death. Gabriel ran to me, Elena following more slowly, and I lifted my son into the glow. It does not hurt. Wonder colored my voice. For the first time in centuries, it does not hurt at all. She smiled, amber eyes bright with unshed tears. Then maybe we are doing something right. Other vampires emerged cautiously, testing the light, gasping as they felt warmth without pain. Some wept, others laughed. A few simply stood in silence, processing the impossibility of blessing after so long under curse. Theron joined me in the garden as sunset approached. The kingdom is changing. His ancient voice carried satisfaction. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Do you think it will last? I watched Gabriel play with other children, both vampire and human mixed groups, unthinkable a year ago. That depends on whether we stay committed when it gets difficult. He settled onto a bench. Change is easy when dramatic, harder when it becomes daily work. I am learning that. I sat beside him, every day learning it again. In the distance, Marcus conferred with council members about integration logistics. Isolde told Gabriel stories about Seraphina, keeping her memory alive without drowning him. Elena sang the cradle song to a group of mixed children, teaching them the melody their grandparents had been forbidden to know. And I, king of vampires for 450 years, sat in a garden brought back to life by choosing love over power, watching my son grow in the light that shone. The work was not finished, would never truly be finished. Some vampires still resisted, some humans still feared, violence still erupted occasionally at integration sites. Marcus and I still argued over policy. Elena still struggled with her half-blood nature. Gabriel would face challenges neither human nor vampire children encountered, but we faced them together, imperfectly, stubbornly, with the kind of grace that came from admitting you did not have all answers and building solutions anyway. That evening, I sang Gabriel to sleep for the first time without Elena's
The
supervision.
time has come to unveil
He
our
settled
strategy.
into my arms,
We must
small-faced,
act
peaceful,
decisively and
and
without
listened
hesitation.
while I worked through all 12 verses of the cradle song. When I finished, he whispered one word before drifting off. Safe. That single word justified everything. The political kiss, the personal transformation, the centuries of mistakes finally acknowledged and addressed. My son felt safe, with me, despite everything I had been and everything I was still learning to become. I carried him to the nursery, tucked him into a bed Elena had chosen, and stood watching him sleep. Mortal mothers did this every night, I realized. This vigil over sleeping children, this silent gratitude for their existence, this fierce determination to build worlds worth inheriting. I was 450 years late, but I was learning, and that would have to be enough. The castle lights glowed warm through the night. The fountain sang its perpetual song. And in the gardens, flowers bloomed in defiance of season and sent stubborn proof that love could make even stone remember mercy. We had not saved the world, had not solved every problem or healed every wound, but we had started, built foundations strong enough to support growth, proven that tyrants could learn gentleness if they tried hard enough. And in a kingdom built on cradles instead of crowns, that was victory enough.